Okay. Tell Tracy I'm not going to snap at her. She corrects me. Tracy, are we allowed to start?
Yes, the mic should be on now.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to start our regular public meeting of the LA County Sheriff Civilian Oversight Commission. We have some members in the audience, some new members, some return members. We have a big agenda, so I'm going to go right to it. My name's Sean Kennedy. I'm the chair, and we have, I think, a couple educational matters on report writing, and we have a lot of business regarding the kind of restructuring of the commission and some ad hoc committees. So why don't we begin? I'll turn it over to Tracy Jordan to tell us how the public can participate in this meeting, either live or virtually.
Good morning. If you wish to speak in person at today's meeting, please turn in your public comment card at the table with the public comment sign. If you are remote, please raise your hand in WebEx or press star 3 on the phone. Each person who signs up for public comment will have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that the chair may adjust the time allotted to less than 3 minutes for each public comment, depending on the number of individuals who have public comment. For each agenda item, I will call the public comment after our commission discussion. General public comment will be heard near the end of the meeting under agenda, non-agenda public comment item, number 12. I will now turn it over to our new translator who will announce the public comment rules in Spanish.
Muy buenos días. Le damos la bienvenida a esta reunión a los miembros de la comunidad. Quienes prefieren hacer sus comentarios en español, les daremos 4 minutos y podemos proveer traducción al inglés. Simplemente siga la palabra español antes de comenzar sus comentarios y le diremos cómo proceder.
We have a code of conduct. I think it's on the published over there. I'm going to just summarize. Public comment is really some of the most important parts of the meeting come from members of the public. We're frank, we're hard-hitting, but we ask that everyone respect each other. We don't always agree with each other, but we do want to hear each other. And so we just ask that you play by the rules. If you get 3 minutes, which is our desire to give to you, when your 3 minutes is over, you stop talking so that other people get their 3 minutes. And we try to respect each other. And you can say what you want. We're not asking you to pull punches, but we're asking you to be polite. So with that, let's call the roll.
I will now conduct the roll call. Chair Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Vice Chair Jaman R. Hicks. Absent. Commissioner Robert Bonner.
Present.
Commissioner Irma Haggins Cooper.
Present.
Commissioner Luis S. Garcia. Absent. Commissioner Patricia Giggins. Absent. Commissioner James P. Harris.
Here.
Commissioner Hans Johnson.
Here.
Chair Hicks, we have a quorum. I turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Okay. Jamon's not here. He filled in for me last time.
I'm sorry, Chair Kennedy. I turn it back
at all.
over to you.
No, it's, I see the typo myself, Tracy. So,
Thank you.
so next is the consent calendar, item 4. I hope everyone had a chance to review our the minutes from our last meeting on May 16th. And is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? from Hans, and is there a second?
Second.
From Rob. So I think that's all we need to do. Everyone approve? Okay. Next, section 5, family impact remarks. We don't have any family who wanted to give family impact remarks today. So we'll go right to our reports. And it tells me that I'm supposed to report on the meet and confer process regarding this commission's subpoena power and the next steps. We were given independent subpoena power under Measure R by the voters, and apparently there was some kind of action in a commission called ERCOM that was filed by the deputy unions challenging or I guess asking for negotiations regarding our ability to subpoena deputies to appear before this commission. And it became an issue, of course, with our special hearings on deputy gangs. And ERCOM told the county that they need to meet and confer with the union in order to enforce our subpoenas against deputies. That happened on November 30th, 2022, and the ERCOM order said it was the hope and expectation of that commission that those meet and confer negotiations regarding compliance with oversight subpoenas would be 60 days. So my thought is that would have been concluded somewhere near the end of January 2023. And we're told here in June of 2024, 18 months later, that they're still meeting and conferring regarding that issue. I think it's an example of how broken the meet and confer process really is. I think any objective observer who looks at this situation would view it as a delay tactic. And I don't know what to do other than to find out who and why people went beyond the 60-day recommended negotiation period to continue to put our subpoena power in doubt, our ability to enforce our subpoena power in doubt. And we spoke about it with the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's constitutional policing officer said that the person responsible for the decision to continue these meet and confer meetings is with the CEO's office, the county executive office. And so my intention is to go to the CEO and find out why they are continuing to do that, because the order really made it clear that the expectation was 60 days, not almost 2 years. That's all I have, Charmaine. Our executive director has her own report, so you want to take over?
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. I'm going to start my update with talking about the activities and also staffing and commission operations, as well as our status on office space. So since last month's meeting, staff and the commission has been very busy. Staff attended several community advisory committee meetings and town halls within various sheriff stations, such as Lancaster and Palo del Amo. Hopefully I got that right. I went on a ride along and a tour of Compton City Hall, as well as the Compton Sheriff Station with community members, Ron Dowell and Isaac Ashbury, who was in the audience. I shared with the captain of Compton Station my concern with the conditions I observed while on the tour. The station could use renovations, which will benefit the employees as well as the deputies and community members who have to go to that station. I also attended US DOJ's Community Dialogue in South Los Angeles for the first time, and will continue to attend these dialogues. We are out at the community at various events, and and meetings such as JCOD's Father's Day resource event, which took place on a Sunday at Magic Johnson Park. Additionally, staff attended the community symposium on street takeovers in Racine. We also attended a great panel presentation on sheriff oversight in California, and that was led by the California Coalition for Sheriff Oversight. So thank you to staff, commissioners, and everyone who attended these events, and also our ad hoc meetings have been very active. It's important that we continue to stay involved throughout the county as we attend these events, meetings, and trainings that also include NACOL webinars. We are keeping in mind our commission strategic goals for community engagement and building partnerships. We will revisit our strategic goals at next month's meeting to look at where we are with meeting our goals for this year. So we are also gearing up for our joint meeting. That's going to be held next Thursday with the Probation Oversight Commission to learn more about the school resource deputy complaint process and LASD's complaint process. Staff is also working with the NACOL's board to develop the panel session on law enforcement gangs. That NACOL conference will be taking place in October of this year in Tucson, Arizona. We have requested permission for 5 commissioners and 3 of our staff to attend the conference. And so, yes, we still need permission to attend the conference because Arizona has been identified as a state where there is some type of issue where we need permission from the CEO's office. So in the meantime, please let us know if you're interested in attending the conference, and this is for the commissioners. So far, we do have the chair, Chair Kennedy, on the panel, as well as Commissioner Hans as a potential moderator. We are also working on the logistics and development of hosting our annual conference on civilian oversight in November, and actually it's going to be on November 8th so far, so please save that date. This will be an opportunity to bring in different oversight entities in California, as well as our partners, commissions, community members, as well as law enforcement to share information, best practices, and experiences. Now, as far as staffing goes, I drank some coffee this morning, so I don't normally do caffeine, so hopefully I'm not going too fast. As far as staffing goes, we have 3 of our staff that continues to be on leave. We are now recruiting and setting up interviews for our community engagement position, as well as the communications manager position. We are also working with HR to get temporary staff and student interns. This has been a long process, and also to our small staff that we have right now, thank you everyone for actually holding it together. I want to also thank our Deputy Executive Director, Bakila Ochoa, who has been putting in a lot of time working with HR and moving this task forward so we can get more help in our office. My next item is going to be the internal commission operations, and I am continuing to identify ways to improve our operations, which includes working with the county's fiscal staff, county council, and the executive office. I have identified how legal service expenditures are applied to the commission's budget as an operation that needs improvement. So we are fiscally responsible for decisions that we have to make. We were able to raise some concerns of billing amounts to county counsel's office, which led to a reimbursement to our budget. And also moving forward, invoices for the commission will be separate from LASD's. This is a cleaner process, so I thank county council and staff for this change. Another area for improvement in the commission's budget is for the commission to have a line item for legal services. My next operational improvement, I know that the commission has expressed interest in us finding a different location to hold our commission meetings. So we are looking at the Magic Johnson Recreation Center to host our meetings next year instead of us using this location. I think that community center is a nice facility, so hopefully this will be a great option for the commission. We'll see next week when we hold our joint meeting with POC. And lastly, for internal operations, staff is working on the creation of a day-to-day operations manual, which would be which will be used as a resource when our office is undergoing staffing transitions. And that's important for us internally to keep everything on point. And lastly is the office space. My update for this office space, I reported out at last month's meeting, and I think the meeting before, that we were looking at trying to get a temporary location because we are on a month-to-month lease. And it looks like we are staying at our current location for now, hopefully until we move to our permanent location in 2027. And if we must move before then, we will have to give a 6-month notice instead of a month notice to move. So county management is aware of the situation, and that completes my report. Please let me know if y'all have any questions, concerns, or anything I can assist y'all with. Thank you.
Thanks, Charmaine. Sheriff Luna is here, and I know that you have to leave at some point. So, Sheriff, we're going to take the LA County Sheriff's update. We're going to take questions that,
I had a comment.
well, we're going to have comments after this, but can it wait, or do you want to go? Okay. Sheriff, do you have any update you want to provide us and the public? You've got the floor, and then we'll take comments.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy, and good morning to everybody. Just a couple of items, and then we'll get to the most important part, questions and concerns from the members of the commission. One, several community meetings, and I'm just giving an overview because I don't go over every meeting that our department was involved in over the last month, but I do want to highlight several that we've had here. Back on May 19th, our mental evaluation team presented strategic communications with a multi-interactive learning objectives presenting to our civilian academy for the city of Lakewood. We've been getting a lot of requests from different community members around the county about wanting to participate in civilian type academies. So obviously COVID had put a rest to a lot of that, but we're going to try and get as engaged as we can to do that. This one was very successful, and our MET team and other specialized units working with them because there's a lot of interest, obviously, in HOST that deals with our unhoused population, and then our mental evaluation teams that are very successful in the field. On June 2nd, I participated along with dozens and dozens of our employees in the West Hollywood Pride Parade. A lot of good engagement, not only for the day of the parade, but the festival. It was extremely successful. And I'm proud to say that we have a lot of support in our LGBTQ community, specifically out in West Hollywood. On June 7th and 8th, we are very engaged as a department with the Special Olympics, the Law Enforcement Torch Run, with a lot of our special athletes and their families. We actually participate year-round in fundraisers for them, with them. Very proud to be part of that, as a lot of our employees have special needs children themselves. On June 12th, we also participated in a facilitated conversation, community dialogue between the South Los Angeles community and the Sheriff's Department that is facilitated by the Federal Department of Justice. And Ms. Mosley was there in attendance, so thank you for attending with us. Each of our 23 patrol stations facilitate quarterly and monthly meetings. I don't have a list of all of them. That can be provided at a later time upon request. And something that we rarely talk about is for the first quarter of 2024, we have town hall meetings in our custody facilities. And year to date, we've had over 800 of them thus far. And that's something that we're fully engaged in, depending on what custody facility we're talking about. Obviously, with the specific inmate population in there, we either have more or less. And good engagement, good opportunities for improvement. And so that's good. And then the only other thing I'll mention overall is, um, I missed the last meeting. I apologize for that. I was in Washington DC for the National Memorial, where unfortunately we added two deputy sheriffs to the memorial wall. From a national perspective, while I was there, I took advantage of being in DC and I met with the head of the Civil Rights Division for the Department of Justice. Obviously, there's some concerns specifically as it relates to our use of force policy and what they believe, and I don't completely disagree, the lack of progress on it. So I was there. I gave them my full commitment that we would continue to work in the direction of doing that. So there's some other things going on behind the scenes where I'm getting more and more engaged, taking away from other things I'm doing to get more involved with the meet and confer process. Now, the chair mentioned meet and confer earlier today. And if I took my notes right, you mentioned that it started back in November of 2022. And I hear frustration in your voice. It is frustrating. So as we talk about the meet and confer regarding our policies, specifically, there's a list of them, but I'll mention the use of force policy and the deputy gang policy, click policy. Those are still ongoing, but I'm hoping to get some progress on that soon. So that's the end of my report, and I stand ready to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Thank you, Sheriff. Irma, you've been waiting. So now is the time for our questions and comments, and then we're going to take public comment while the sheriff's here, hopefully.
No, I had a comment on the executive report. I just wanted to say that Bakila's summary reports to the commissioners is excellent, and I really enjoy those summary reports. And also, I attended the sheriff oversight in California, balancing power with responsibility. And I was totally surprised that this group singled out our commission as one of the top oversight commissions. And they thought whatever we were doing was excellent. So I just want to give you, Mr. Chair, congratulations for that, along with the executive director and all of my coworkers, because we all work hard to make this commission work.
Thank you, Irma. Rob?
Yeah, I'll just,
Hey.
here on that one. Just a question for the sheriff. On the question, one of the primary responsibilities of the sheriff's department is public safety. And I'm wondering, whether you could, are in a position to discuss with us how it looks within the county of Los Angeles, let's say with respect to the trend lines with regard to property crimes, violent crime, and the like. And what do you think those trend lines are looking like? And I guess part of that also would involve the question of whether the sheriff's department, in terms of its role in terms of assuring public safety, is getting adequate cooperation and response from the district attorney's office with respect to criminal offenses that have been investigated by the detectives within the department. By the way, I don't want to rule out maybe actually giving us some data on that in terms of maybe the next meeting, because I think we are interested in seeing, in terms of our oversight role, how the sheriff's department is performing with respect to public safety within the county.
Thank you for the question. I have a preliminary summary ending about the beginning of May. So I will have to come back to you, and we update these numbers, and for the public, they are on our website as well. Violent crime throughout the county of Los Angeles is, at least as of May 1st, was at 0.2 negative. So it's it's almost even, but it is down just a tad.
This is compared to the fiscal year before.
Any number I give you is year-to-date compared to year-to-date last year,
Got it. Thank you.
for clarification. In regards to property crime is up 6.6% throughout the county of Los Angeles. And I don't recall if I've talked about it in this venue. I know I have publicly, but we at the Sheriff's Department have started a new crime strategy that is going to, I believe, have an impact positively on crime throughout Los Angeles County. It's a data-driven effort. It is very much focused on relationship-based policing so that we're working with specific community groups, because a lot of times we look at stats, but when we travel around the county, when our captains are having meetings with their communities, what they see as a priority may not always reflect the stats that I'm sharing with you. So in the strategy, it is flexible. You hold each captain of each station accountable, not only for knowing what is happening, but how they're responding to it and how they're engaging not only our community members, but other government entities to make sure that we're all on the same page. In regards to the second part of your question regarding criminal filings and the district attorney, my goal is to work hand in hand. From the minute I walked into this office, I don't make excuses. I don't try not to point the fingers at people for challenges that we're having, which means this. If our stats are going up, for example, in a specific category, let's just say auto theft, which, by the way, auto theft is driving our Part 1 property crime for the County of Los Angeles. I want to know what strategies we're using or employing to reduce that crime category. So in the last year, we've had a significant challenge. We've had significant challenges with, like, for example, Kias that are stolen and Hyundais at a much greater rate than others. So working with the companies to upgrade technologies so that we reduce those crimes. But when we do make arrests in those categories, and we do, what are the filings like? Are our detectives getting the filings on the individuals who are stealing the cars? And that's data that I don't have in front of me, but it is a consistent question that's being asked. There is a significant level of frustration from a lot of community members, specifically business owners in Los Angeles County, who feel that whether it's the DA or what they believe is current legislation that is not holding specifically repeat offenders accountable for crimes that are being committed. And the specific example I could use is in retail theft, because it's one thing for somebody to go in, and not that I condone this, but if you need food, you need milk, bread, whatever it is for your kids, that's one thing. We can always get through that. But if you have individuals that are going in and stealing for a living, and there are individuals that we have found, because as we're getting better at addressing retail theft, we're seeing that there are individual store owners who are actually sending out young people to steal so they could make a profit. And I know this because we're starting to arrest them too, making an impact. And I know with the DA's office, for example, we monitor very closely the prosecutions in those arenas. Sorry for the long answer.
No.
It is a very in-depth question. Community should know, needs to know our efforts, but it's ongoing. There is a lot of frustration, the perception that crime's out of control, specifically when you're watching videos of crimes that are occurring. But it is, we work very diligently and hard to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure people feel safe and that businesses can thrive in the communities, specifically the mom and pop shops that are heavily impacted by these habitual offenders that are committing crimes.
Yeah. It's good to deal with facts and data and not just news clips and the like. So I appreciate that answer. Do you still, you and your command staff, do you still use the ComStat process with respect to captains in the patrol stations and the like? Or have you abandoned that?
With the history of our department, we really haven't used that. That's more of an LAPD
Yeah.
portion that they took from New York PD when Chief Bratton was there. That's why coming in, and not to get into too much details about historic, I don't like to sit here and talk about too much of the past. You learn from it, you move on. That's why this crime strategy I just mentioned, which I'm happy to talk about in a future meeting, more in depth, I think is going to be very effective because it does what ComStat does. It holds us accountable to specific neighborhoods for crime increases.
We could probably discuss that offline, the ComStat process and the value of using it and how it might be used within the sheriff's department. I had just one other question, Chair Kennedy, if I could.
Yes.
What about the uses of lethal force by the deputies so far this year? First of all, I know it's hard to do a trend line because, you know, it's good that the data set is very small, but nonetheless, what is the data on that if you have it? In other words, how many uses of lethal force have there been by deputies within the department so far this fiscal year, and how does that compare to last year, if you can say?
Last year, I was happy to report that we went down a little over 30, I want to say it was 35%. This year so far, year to date, we have 9 compared to 6 this time last year. So we are up 3 at this point. We just had 2 this last week. We had one up in Compton where we had an individual shooting a shotgun at deputies and then at the helicopter. And then we had another one out in the Antelope Valley where it was allegedly a carjacking suspect. And yeah, we ended up, that was not a fatal. The other one was.
I had just one more, Ed, that's in a different subject, but as you know, we talked a little bit about the deputy click and deputy gang recommendations that were made by this commission some time ago and their status, and you briefed us on that with respect to meet and confer. I'm just wondering, as you know, from time to time, this commission makes policy recommendations to the sheriff. We have since our inception. And I'm wondering whether you would have a problem if, let's say, a policy hasn't been adopted that we've recommended after serious study on our part. Would you have any problem with, and let's say in a reasonably timely way, 60 days or so, just informing the commission why you haven't adopted a policy? I mean, just tell us, because I don't know that that's a matter of process, but it seems to me that would be an orderly process if we're going to perform or oversight. You're free to reject our recommendations, by the way, don't get me wrong. You're running the sheriff's department, not us. But we'd kind of like to just get some feedback. And you have provided that with respect to the deputy clicks gangs. You've certainly verbally provided us with, why the policies haven't been adopted, because at this point, they're still in a meet and confer process as they have been for nearly a year with ALADS and the other union. But I'm just wondering, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but would that be something that you would be willing to do?
If you can, I know you made a statement. I know there's a question there in the beginning. Can you please re-ask the question?
Yeah, would you be willing to just provide us, within on maybe 60 days, if you haven't adopted one of our policies, just a short statement as to why you haven't adopted it?
I don't see any problem with me doing that. Obviously, I'll check with county council to make sure I'm not violating something that I shouldn't. But publicly, I could say I'd love to.
Okay.
But let me just make sure that I legally can.
Yep, understood. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Anyone else? Hans?
I wanted to just follow up on something that was reported to this commission at our last meeting in May regarding observations by the civil brand commissioners who visited Men's Central Jail in an unscheduled visit and beheld some conditions there that I think were truly shocking to the conscience of many members of the commission and many members of the public who were here at our commission meeting in May. They've since been reported. I think despite your absence, I know you were paying attention to them even during your travel. And the revelations about the misconduct by deputies on duty at Men's Central Jail who were observed failing to attend to a life-threatening situation involving the hanging of a noose in a incarcerated person's cell, and then watching adult videos on screens while they were on duty and neglecting responsibility under security checks and even failing to respond to commissioners' alerts to conditions they observed. I just wanted to ask about follow-up. I know that you and your staff are paying attention to this report and to the conditions or the systemic conditions that it reveals, but I wanted to give you a chance to respond here to those reports and to the concern voiced by the public over the conditions that were documented by the civil brand commissioners.
I'll start off by saying those allegations are extremely troubling. And if true, have absolutely zero business I'm sorry, I'm trying to answer questions and it's a little
let's-
challenging at times.
Yeah, let's-
Because I thought there's rules of civility in here where
There-
I can hopefully give an answer without,
Listen, the sheriff has been asked a question and he's trying to answer it, and then we're going to have public comment. We're going to have public comment and you're going to be able to comment. So can we respect our rules so that we can actually meet our mission? Go ahead.
thank you. So the allegations are extremely disturbing. And if that's happening, not only is it unacceptable, because it shouldn't be happening. The responsibilities that we have are extensive, and there's a strict policy that prohibits the allegations that have been brought forward. So when it was brought to our attention, we immediately started to investigate it and get witness comments. Everybody who says that they saw whatever they saw, bring that forward, put it in writing. The employees, asking them any evidence that we could come up with, what's on camera, what's not. If somebody's doing that kind of activity, we should be able to look at the systems and it should be able to either prove or disprove what those allegations are. At the end of the day, it is my job to make sure that it's investigated appropriately. Two, that there's due process in the way we do it, and then come forward with whatever discipline is warranted, not only for those individual employees, but to send a strong message that if this is true, this is 100% unacceptable.
I agree. I thank you for that response. I do just want to note the shock to the conscience of public employees. I think that this episode and the facts laid out by the commissioners have caused. In my own conversations with community members, talking with teachers, with school administrators, with mail carriers, with lifeguards, any other public servants who I've talked about this with, express shock that this kind of evidence could be on the record and that people still have their jobs. And I want to just indicate the sense of shock that there is such a protracted approach of fact-finding and investigation over something that is very well documented, Civil brand commissioners and the extent of documentation provided in their report is very detailed. And I think it has been validated in further fact-finding by the press and other outlets. But I just want to note, from a standpoint of integrity and from the taxpayers of Los Angeles County, this is a shocking incident that really does beggar credulity at what kinds of consequences can be brought down on misconduct of this severity. And I just want to voice that sense of real mystification over what might be a protracted period of internal adjudication, because for many public employees, this simply doesn't pass the smell test.
Hear you very loud and clear.
And I also just want to make one note, because I think for those of us who care about occupational safety and health and conditions in our workplaces, certainly we have many labor partners, many people here in Los Angeles County who've worked their entire careers to create more safer workplaces. I do just want to note that since the last meeting of this commission, the state has actually weighed in about the conditions at the firing range up at Pitchess Detention Center at North County. And though the malfunction or the explosion that happened inside the shooting range that took the life of a deputy who died following injuries, I think 6 months after the episode last October. I just want to ask, and thank you again for your presence here, about your reaction, I guess, as sheriff, but also whatever steps are being taken in addition to your personal reaction to that evidence. What steps are being taken to improve security and to respond to the $300,000 fine from the state over the conditions in that trailer?
So one of my many responsibilities as your sheriff is to come in, when I came in, look at policy, process, systems of accountability, and training. And unfortunately, amongst a list of things that we have found that are deficient is training. I've had many community members, not only the ones that come here, but out in the field that recognize some of those deficiencies. I think all of you do. And within the department, there's some great people there, but we need to improve our training. I say that as a foundation to answer your question, because as we look at these trailers that we've used to qualify, because every deputy needs to qualify on a quarterly basis. I want to say, if my numbers strike me right, although I don't have the information in front of me, there's about 18 of them throughout the county. The minute this tragic incident happened, and you mentioned, I did lose, a deputy lost his life because of this. I have another deputy who was so significantly injured, he will never probably return to work. So I stopped the use of these trailers. They have not been used since that incident. We are not only doing an internal thorough review of what happened, but how we got there in the first place, which does include the citations from OSHA. One thing we did immediately when this occurred is to bring in the ATF, who are experts in this arena, to make sure that we had an independent view of not only looking at what occurred, but even the history of it. So there is still, their investigation is not complete. There's a lot of work to be done, but there is going to be recommendations about how our deputies qualify in the future. Qualification is something that everyone in law enforcement has to do. So our job is to make sure that they're doing it in a safe manner, safe facilities, and looking at the budgets allotted to do this. So that is all being looked at, being turned upside down. One of many things that are. I want to make sure I answered your question. There's a lot to it. And it's a tragedy. And yeah, I can't help but think of Freddie's wife and kids right now as I'm answering this question.
So the trailers are not in use anymore. You've suspended the use of the trailers.
Yes, from the day that occurred, nobody, to my knowledge, has been able to utilize those trailers to qualify. We're using other facilities, asking for other agencies for their assistance as we're continuing to qualify. And then I need a long-term answer on how we're going to do this.
I just say, thank you. Thank you for that. And if you do get a report from the ATF, feel free to bring back that report or a summary to this body. I think we'd be interested in hearing the results of that independent view.
Yes.
Add a question to that, because hearing your response, I'm concerned, does that investigation include the maintenance of that equipment? Is there documentation of when the maintenance was done? Are safety briefings done before the officers even get started? Is there documentation?
Is all that included in the investigation? Yes. Those are all questions I need answered.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is an area where this commission could be helpful, so I want the sheriff to know that. I mean, I think it's important that the sheriff's department, who has a large number of sworn officers who need to qualify periodically in the use of firearms, have an adequate firing range for purposes of qualifying. If we can use somebody else's firing range, great, but if we can't, we need to figure out a way to budget into the sheriff's department something that would be adequate for an agency, a law enforcement agency of its size, to be able to do this. And I think it speaks volumes that somebody in the past decided that trailers would be used to begin with. And then obviously the trailers have some issues and we need to know what happened. But I'm also saying, Sheriff, we also want to be helpful in terms of providing some solutions for the future to the extent we can with the department and with the Board of Supervisors if that requires additional funding.
Okay. Sheriff, can I ask your advice? As I near the end of my tenure as chair of this commission, I look back, and one of my goals was that the department would pass a policy prohibiting membership in law enforcement gangs, deputy gangs, and cliques. And it looks like that won't happen. And that is just one example of the meet and confer process kind of eclipsing or thwarting meaningful oversight from this commission. Our ability to enforce subpoenas against employees of the department has been stalled by the meet and confer we already mentioned. The implementation of a policy against the gangs is stalled by the meet and confer process, which you just reported on. And my understanding is this commission's attempt to negotiate a memorandum of understanding so that ad hoc committees can get confidential information that would help us make meaningful recommendations regarding policy. We'll also have to go through the meet and confer process. And I'm just wondering, as someone who's directly involved in the process, which we're not, do you have any ability to speed up that process? Or do you have any insight into how this commission could impact that or weigh in on that? Because when we hear that meet and confers last for years, nobody can understand why that would be. Like, I do respect the fact that the unions need to be consulted regarding matters that impact your employees. But I would think a meet and confer could be, done within weeks, or like we heard from the ERCOM Commission, 60 days. And yet we've had immediate confers that have gone on for years. And is there any ability that you have within your power to speed these up?
I've been doing that for months.
Okay.
And just like, not to repeat, but you started your comments today with the frustration about a meet confer that goes back to November of 22nd.
Yeah.
You also stated that you don't think that this policy is going to pass during your tenure. I'm a little bit more optimistic.
That's good to hear.
I'm pushing. And I would rather not get into detail about that, as frustrating as it is for our community, because there's some things going on behind the scenes that are getting a little bit more intense. And anything I say publicly today, I don't want to derail it.
Okay.
But I do want to throw out a couple of things, if I may.
Sure.
As it relates to deputy gangs, yes, we absolutely need a policy. But I do want to make it clear that the work of this commission and the Inspector General, and which comes from our community members, has not fallen on deaf ears. Although I respect and understand the frustration because of how long it's taking. But the fact is that I do believe things are shifting. And although there's been progress and there needs to be more progress, I don't want to get away from the fact that, at least for me and my current administration, that we've made it very clear that any conduct consistent with 13670 PC is not going to be tolerated. And as a matter of fact, for the first time in our history, there are employees who no longer are with us because they violated that. And that has to be crystal clear. That's one. Making adjustments to the way that our internal affairs investigators even ask questions about these issues has changed. And there's progress there. I'm not sitting here taking all the credit for it, because it's us listening to all of you, which again includes the Inspector General's office, because of in-depth conversations there. So when we're talking about whether they're criminal investigations or administrative investigations, we are in a place today where we weren't, say, 2 years ago. But there's still a lot of work to do. There's a ton of work to do. And I've said this, and I'll say it again, there are several active deputy gang investigations going on right now. But I can't sit here and get into details about them, because at the end of the day, in order for us to be successful, they have to be done appropriately through the proper administrative and criminal process. Because if I don't, then people get away with it because we're talking about it out loud. And I get the frustration, but that is the reality of the systems that we live in. I talked about the discipline about employees, and there's some other things that we're doing. For example, when we hire new employees, basically they have to sign a form that they will not be involved in this kind of activity. That's never been done before. That may sound simple, but there's steps, and there continues to be steps. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I know you're frustrated, and in your statement, it sounds like we're not doing anything, and that couldn't be furthest from the truth. But clarification, there's a lot more that needs to be done.
Well, I will try to exercise patience, and I appreciate you at least addressing it. I don't understand the meet and confer process and why it could last that long. It seems like a willful delay tactic on the part of someone involved in that process, but maybe not. And I appreciate you addressing my concerns. And I think we have several members of the public who want to do public comment. I appreciate you letting the sheriff answer our questions and speak, and now we'll hear public comment.
I would just note, Chair, that I think on behalf of commissioners, I think we expect you to continue to voice impatience and to exert impatience. Because I think
That's the easy part. The hard part is to be patient. Public comment?
Yes, we have several public comments. The first one is Raquel Derfler.
Good morning.
Morning.
Raquel with Cancel the Contract, AV. So I'm here to speak about upcoming school resource deputy contracts. So my remarks will be to the commission, but also to Captain Dietrich, who heads up the program. So with the current contracts about to expire, we are very concerned about the lack of any real communication or public information about the new contracts. So as you know, the OIG sent their recommendations to the department back in February, but our understanding is there's been no real effort by the department to engage in a true faith effort to put protections in places for students. So I'm saying this to Captain Dietrich. You want to tell us, everyone wants to tell us that the resource program is to protect our students. If this is so, what is the issue with putting down policies in writing? The problem with not having anything there is when something does happen that may be against policy of department, there is nothing for us in community to point to and say, this was violated. So there are a couple of recommendations that we feel very, very strongly about at Cancel the Contract. We want to make sure that there is no resource deputy involvement in any kind of disciplinary or administrative actions. This needs to actually be written out in the contract. So if a member of staff does, have a call for service, that the deputy has the ability to say that is not, within my scope of work, that I cannot do that. The OIG is looking for, handcuffing to be prohibited unless it is like life-threatening. We want it to go further. We want a ban on handcuffing at minimum of K through 5th grade. There is literally no reason to handcuff any child of that age. I know this as a parent. If they're having some type of situation, there is a way to physically restrain them that does not harm them and does not have, traumatizing of being handcuffed. We know this occurs. I don't think any elementary age school should be handcuffed, but I think the public can get, why would you handcuff a 5-year-old? And if that's not spelled out, then guess what? They can do it. We are also concerned that LASD's policy does not prohibit using chokeholds or carotid restraints, even though federal law already states that. So we want that in writing, that we are not going to be doing this to students. The OIG recommended a, prohibition on category 2 and 3/4. Let me just state that body slam is still considered a category 1 unless there's a visible injury. But guess what? Bruises don't show up instantaneously. Or let's talk about the emotional trauma of being body slammed by a grown person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment is from Julie Martinez.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I represent the organization Check the Sheriff, and I'm also the grandmother of a grandson who was shot and murdered by an LA sheriff deputy gang member. So we recently celebrated Juneteenth. It's recognized as a federal holiday, obviously to abolish slavery. And though we now know that slavery continued, we must continue to acknowledge that institutional racism exists. It continues to exist. It's not enough for us just to reflect and remember. It's more important that we develop strategies to correct ongoing effects of racism. I'm going to segue to the LA County Sheriff Department. We must acknowledge that racism is deeply embedded in law enforcement throughout the country. Racism is prevalent in the entire criminal justice system, including Los Angeles. And number one, LA County Sheriff Department is ground zero for racism. On your first day of office, excuse me for trying to tell you what I think you should do, but I think you should have focused on ending all deputy gangs. I heard your report on how there is an ongoing investigation. That's not enough. LASD is synonymous with deputy gangs. It's synonymous with racism, and it's synonymous with use of force. What are some of the solutions we can do until we acknowledge the multiple complaints that deputy gangs are inflicting upon our communities, including violation of our constitutional rights, terrorizing our community? I can go on and name so many of them. Number one should be the identification of tattoos, which are numbered, which are updated as these deputy gang members continue to terrorize our community. This is an easy way to identify deputy sheriffs. We do not have to say that I'll wait and see if it results in any damage. The fact that they have a deputy gang tattoo is considered damage. Where do we go from here? You must immediately stop any retaliation against whistleblowers. There is a tool that you can use, automatic firing. That's a tool that you have in your disposal. Another tool you have this tool within most LE departments, especially in California. It's called Cal Gangs. Create a Cal Gangs database for deputy gang members that freely exists within LASD. You don't have to show them. You don't have to print it out. You don't have to violate their rights. Start collecting the data. In conclusion, Sheriff Luna, you have enough reports. You have fantastic reports from this committee that was set up. Follow them.
Thank
Acknowledge
you.
them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker we have is Vanessa Perez.
I didn't prepare anything. Usually when I do prepare something, Sheriff Luna, you're not here. So I'm just coming up here, just talking freely right now. Me and Michelle worked real hard on presenting Joseph's case last month. I don't know if you got a chance to see the presentation that we did and showing the way your deputies failed Joseph on so many different levels. A lot of bloody pictures, a lot of cleaned uniforms from deputies, you know, and then to hear of industry Indians, you know, what can be done about all of this instead of them getting promoted or getting awards? You said you were going to go ahead and get rid of these deputy gangs and do something about it. But since I've been here, coming to here, I've seen 2 deputies get awards. I've seen 1 deputy put in a high school with my daughter. I haven't seen anything done yet. And then I've seen the captain turn into a chief that justified my son's beating. Yeah, that's it, you know, and I hope you took the time and were able to see the presentation. You know, we did work hard on that and had some points going on in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also I sent an email to all of you guys of what Harris asked for. I hope you guys get that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Benny Martinez.
Hello, and thank you, Commission, for being here and existing. And that was actually great work, Ms. Mosley. And I hope you continue to be very diligent with those efforts. To the sheriff, you know, thanks for trying to provide answers that seemingly focus on the things you wanted to focus on. But you talked about some civilian type academies that are supposed to support or garner support for the sheriffs. I would say, why not create academies that garner support to eliminate the gangs. There's possibility that they would be in favor of it, especially if they are aware, whether because of the news and because of the families that they've been hurt, families that have been harassed and that have asked to not be harassed after they've lost their loved one, so they could just properly mourn. It's one of those things that when any of us have lost anybody in our life, we mourn differently. They don't get to mourn in the way that they want to. When somebody's life is taken in that way, it's probably the worst tragedy that they'll ever experience. And if you haven't experienced that, lost somebody by the hands of a coworker apparently, until then, is that the point when you'll actually understand? And that's something that I can easily say because I served in the Marine Corps for about 9 years. I got out as a disabled veteran. So I've seen where generals have been able to change their policies because of the experiences that they had when they lost what they saw as good friends. And that's the only reason why they changed. Now, other points I'd like to make include when it comes down to crime and theft, the sheriff wanted to focus on property, not violent crime. There's a very significant figure there where violent crime is kind of stabilized in a sense. Maybe it's something to look into. Maybe it's something to provide more detail on. When it comes to property crime, half of that could even be fraud. And as opposed to addressing all of these issues in such a manner where you're allocating more funds for it, you could be allocating more funds towards maybe just policies that eliminate gangs, advocating for that more, creating those civilian commissions or training academies so that they can help eliminate those gangs, since it seems as if though it's your intention, but your hands are tied. And that's what you keep expressing, I'm assuming. And if your hands are tied, well, give the civilians that empowerment. Because until then, the families are going to continue to hurt, and you're still going to continue to show what everybody here sees, which is that your hands are tied, you'd love to do something, but you ultimately can't. And this commission, unfortunately, doesn't have the teeth to make it happen. So let's the gangs out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next and final public comment is from Isaac Ashbury.
Whenever you're ready, Isaac.
Good morning.
Morning.
First of all, I want to thank the commission for putting up the good fight. I want to thank Ms. Mosley for coming to Compton and take a tour. He's scheduled to do a ride-along in July. If anybody's interested in doing a ride-along in Compton, let me know, and we'll set up the appointment for you. But what you see there on this map, got a call from a commissioner. I don't want to run him off, but it's Mr. Johnson. And he was talking about the impacts of people losing loved ones. So all those red dots you see are the homicides in the city of Compton for the past 24 years. If you see the green dots, those are all the fatal shootings by the sheriff's department. And the little white dots, there's 17 of them you probably can't see, those were all the arrests in 24 years. So I brought the documentation to show that these people are being killed and nobody's been arrested. Okay. So I'm going to leave this with you, and that. Okay. Last Friday, we had a graduation ceremony. 6 people were shot, right? I don't know if you heard about that. One of the guys passed away. And he was his mother is in the funeral business, but she's very popular in the city of Compton. I say that to say this. The 4 people that came and did the shooting was with a gang that everybody knows is in the city of Compton, okay? His funeral is going to be Sunday at 2:00. It's the same place where he was killed. His mother has a large set of property, and that's where she's going to be holding the funeral. We contacted the sheriff department to let them know this is what's occurring. So if we can get through Sunday without serious incidents occurring, I pray that we do. Second thing I wanted to submit to you, I'll give you a copy. I made up our organizational chart of the sheriff department for the executive staff. Anybody that was part of a gang at one time, we pretty much got their name in the box, right? So the gangs we're looking for is executioners, banditos, the ones that do fatal shootings. We don't care about no station tattoo gang, right? So I want you to take a look at this. If you have any questions, you give us a call. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Kennedy, we have one more public comment from Michelle Infante.
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Michelle Infante. I'm with Dignity and Power Now. First and foremost, I want to make this clear. The reason why you guys are here and have all this information regarding the sheriff deputies, LASD, is because of all the families behind me. They're the ones that give you that information. They're the ones that deal with that on a daily basis, 24/7. So anything that's up here regarding what they're passing over to the sheriff's department is coming from family members in the community. And that's how you're able to get that information. Second of all, I'm really disturbed that a female passed away who died at the women's facility at least 4 weeks ago. And we didn't hear anything about that. And no one from the commission bothered to talk about it. Second, there were 5 girls who OD'd on fentanyl after the one that died. And we haven't heard anything about that from the sheriff's department. It would have been very nice if the sheriff would have been here to discuss what he's doing about people dying inside the women's facility at Linwood. Because we all know from Professor Miller, who went to the men's jail and came forward and talked about the sheriff deputies who are looking at porn. And I can appreciate the language that you use, but if you don't use the appropriate language, it doesn't have the same effect. You guys are always trying to lighten it up. Lighten it up. Adult film or whatever you said, Commissioner. It was fucking porn. Porn. And the sheriff's department is up here representing themselves and talking about all these great programs and things that they're doing. We know that there's something good happening in there. The problem is that we don't hear the stuff that's bad. And you don't see it or hear it unless you walk in like Professor Miller, who goes in whenever someone in the community is asking for help. It's a desperate move because we can't get you guys to go in there, so we ask someone else to do it for us. And then they come out with that information and give it to you. It's a shame that the sheriff isn't here to listen to this. It's very frustrating to look up here at the tables and see who's here, knowing that some of you, when you have people that work beneath you and you send them into the jails, that they come back, Dara Williams, and instead of believing what people who are inside, who are incarcerated, who are bringing you this information, you want to believe the coworker that you had, Eric Bates. It's a shame that people like you are up here because you're not representing the community properly. You haven't ever said anything about Ruby Beltran. Let me tell you about Ruby Beltran. She's dead now. She's dead because the department didn't want to give her cancer treatment.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair Kennedy.
Well, those are some sobering public comments. Thank you. Next, we have a report from the Office of Inspector General.
First of all, I do apologize that, I shouldn't apologize, but there are oftentimes rules in place that prevent us from sharing information with the public, including HIPAA and other laws that, prevent us from sharing everything that we know. And so that does sometimes confine us in what we're able to share. But going back to some of the things that were said today previously, one of the most important functions of the Inspector General's office is to monitor. And when we're not able to monitor, we're not able to report to the public what efforts are truly being made to change things, to move forward, to explain if something is truly going at a glacial pace or if there is real progress. We are involved in the Measure R meet and confer process, mostly because ERCOM dragged us in to that process since we have subpoena power as well. But all I can say is that we are involved in the process continues, and there is an exchange. We unfortunately can't say more than the fact that, so in other words, you're prevented from discussing what happens in meeting and conferring, but at least I can say in that process that we're part of it, right?
So your office is a part of it because we're not.
So I think you need to talk to county council because I'm fairly sure when Danielle was the executive director that she was at those negotiations. So you need to talk to county council because my belief is that the commissioners would not necessarily be entitled to be there, but that either Ms. Mosley or Mr. Ochoa could certainly attend those negotiations. Once again, all that we can report out is that at least I can say that there are efforts being made, that there are negotiations, but I can't say exactly, what the details of it are. But to get to my main point is that in the other negotiations, we are not permitted to be there. And I think that's a real disservice to the public because if we're not there, we can't say there are negotiations. We can't say what's happening in good faith. We can't say the process is moving as fast as the process can. And to be fair, I don't think on Measure R that the process is moving as fast as it can. I do agree that there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of people involved. And so getting a group of people together to meet is always a difficulty. But at some point in time, an impasse has to be declared, right? These things can't just go on forever. And I do think that with deputy gangs and with other things where there's a state law requirement that our patience for when an impasse declared, is wearing thin and should be. However, if the sheriff were to implement a policy without going through the meet and confer process, he would still have to meet and confer on what's called the effects of the policy. In any event, the bottom line is that if you shut out the Office of Inspector General from the meet and confer process, from deputy gang investigations, we can't say that there's progress. We can't say that everybody's acting in good faith. What we do know about deputy gang investigations is that we know that people at the Sheriff's Department were promoted. We know that there's allegations that some of those people are or were, whatever you want to say, members of an association that appears to be a law enforcement gang, according to the definition. And it's our understanding that, well, I shouldn't say what our understanding is because we asked questions about the promotion process and we have not yet received answers to those questions. But what we do know is that there was an LA Times article for a high-ranking Sheriff's Department official who told the LA Times that he doesn't remember anyone else who was in the same group for which he has a tattoo, presumably a numbered tattoo. And that is just inconceivable. And Mr. Huntsman recently sent the COC a letter that pointed out that Larry Delmise and another individual also claimed to have no memory whatsoever.
The former undersheriff.
Yes.
Yes.
So the bottom line is that that's just not possible. It is not possible that they don't remember a single other person. And if you're going to have a promotion process, right, we're not talking about discipline. We're not talking about firing anybody. We're not talking about line deputies. We're talking about people seeking to be part of the command staff of the Sheriff's Department who are not being forced to answer questions, right? Fine, you went and changed your tattoo. Fine, you went and got rid of your tattoo. But if you want to be part of the Sheriff's Department command staff, there is no reason not to compel these people to give answers about who else is a member of that deputy gang, or was at least at the time, right? Because part of establishing that these organizations exist is that you have to identify the members, right? Which is really a big part because for the most part, these groups are exclusionary based on gender and sometimes on race, right? So, and that violates 13670 in a very simple, straightforward way. So the biggest thing is that we, as the Office of Inspector General, have to be invited in. If we're not invited in, we cannot say that things are happening at the right pace. And I understand that the Sheriff's Department wants to do things in a way that they can bring everybody along, right? But the Office of Inspector General has been in existence now for 10 years, right? We've done multiple reports. We've done report cards with all of our recommendations and the lack of the implementation of those recommendations, which is also true of the COC recommendations, right? So we don't have time, especially with the DOJ investigation, we don't have time to delay any longer. These things have to happen now, and the Office of Inspector General has to be invited in to monitor these things so that I think, one, to essentially say if things are happening in good faith, and two, I think it pushes things along. It moves things along. We're not asking to participate. We're not asking to be part of the negotiations, right? Measure R is a different bird, so to speak, because we are involved in that. But we're just asking to monitor. And then with regard to the promotions, you know, this goes along with the sort of code of silence. It's sort of the don't ask, don't tell policy, right? You got your tattoo removed, so we're not going to push you. We're not going to make anybody show us their tattoos. That we're not going to do that, right, as part of our investigations. I don't know, maybe they are, but we don't have our questions answered about those investigations in a way that satisfies us that these are rigorous investigations of law enforcement gangs. Somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was Commissioner Bonner, that, you know, the why haven't these things been implemented? And that's a really big issue with the Office of Inspector General's recommendations, right? We're rarely given a why. And this happened on the school resource deputy contracts where we made a series of investigations. We did engage with the Sheriff's Department. We were told they were very close to implementing all of our recommendations. They gave us a statement of work. I edited their statement of work to say, if you include all of the things that are on your statement of work, if you accept our edits, we would be fine with these school resource deputy contracts, right? They didn't accept all the edits, and there's no explanation for why, which is a key thing. If you're going to say to the Office of Inspector General, we don't want this recommendation, explain why. The why is part of it. It has to be answered why it's not happening. There was no indication that there was an issue with meet and confer. Some of the things, I mean, there was one thing that I wanted deleted and there was no reason for it to be in there. And there was no answer to why it had to be in there. It had to do with when a juvenile statement is admissible in a court of law, if there's a Miranda violation. But why would that have to be in the school resource deputy contract, right? There's just no reason. So I think that to, you know, and it goes along with your searching for an MOU with the department, right? It's all the same thing. It's like, if you don't explain yourself, then how can we trust you? We have to have explanations. We have to be in the room. We need to do it because the public needs to be able to trust the Civilian Oversight Commission and the Office of Inspector General. And if we're not there, we can't provide that information. And then just finally to talk about the Sybil Brand visit. It's really important that the cameras at the jails be monitored in real time. And that's not happening. It's not happening because people are watching pornography. It's not happening because people are playing cards. It's not happening because people are watching movies, right? Title 15 is a floor. It's not a ceiling. You need to care for the people in your custody as if you care for the people in your custody. We understand that they're there for a reason, but they're people. And in order to care for them, we need to make sure that they are being observed in a way that ensures their safety as much as it can be ensured. And so it's really crucial. There is right now a motion by the board to discuss fixed cameras, and that will be one of our recommendations. And that wraps it up unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions?
Well, one, a comment and then a question, but comment would be that I believe this commission would fully support the OIG being able to monitor the meet and confer process. I think there'll be a consensus on that. And I think that's important so we can understand whether there are delays. And I think as you've said, it may incentivize things to move more quickly, and anything that would do that, I'm in favor of. The second, though, is a question, but it's a legal question, really. But I'm going to throw it out there because I actually don't understand why, let's say, the Oversight Commission subpoena power is not only authorized by Measure R, it's authorized by the state legislature in AB 1185. State law. There's no meet and confer. I mean, you go back up to the legislature if you want to change it, but there's no meet and confer. I don't understand. I mean, I'm saying that, I'm asserting that. I do not understand, and I've dealt with labor law issues and unions. I do not understand why there is a meet and confer process as to the Oversight Commission's legal authority, because we're given that legal authority, under state law. And maybe, I don't know, maybe county council could venture a view on that to enlighten me and educate me. But I'll start with.
The good news is
I'll start with you.
I am a lawyer.
Do you have any idea? I know.
I'm a lawyer, so that's kind of
Well,
good.
maybe you could venture,
So-
maybe you could help me out here.
I will try. So I attended a Liebert Cassidy Whitmore seminar on meeting and conferring and was sorely disappointed after the seminar that they didn't say things that I wanted to hear.
I wanted to what?
That I wanted to hear. So the problem is that certain things are managerial decisions, right? And obviously the sheriff's department is manager, they can make decisions. We have obviously the force of state law behind us. As you are aware, the Inspector General also served, well, in one case we served a subpoena and were sued, and in another case we sent out letters and were sued by the two different deputy unions. So Judge Chalfant wrote a tentative ruling in the lawsuit by ALADS, which I have to say I understood a little bit better after going to the Liebert Cassidy Whitmore seminar, because apparently everything is effects bargaining. Apparently everything, I shouldn't say everything. There are a few things that aren't effects bargaining, but the issue is, what is the effect on the union members, right? So, and the key one for the unions is always discipline, right? What happens if in response to the Inspector General's letter, they don't show up? What happens in response to the Inspector General's subpoena if there's no answer? You know, there's other little tiny things like, do you get paid? Do you have to wear your uniform? How do you tell your supervisors, right? But the real key thing is the effect of any policy on disciplining the deputies, right? So unfortunately, we do have to effects bargain sometimes. And that's what ERCOM said. And that's what Judge Chalfant said. And that's also, I'm blanking on the other judge's name right now in the POPA litigation, Beckloff. He also said the same thing. Now, we've appealed those. I know that we appealed Judge Chalfant's decision. We've already filed our brief. My understanding is that we are appealing Judge Beckloff's decision. So, I mean, at least we do have to give county council credit that they are supportive of that. And in all of our papers, our the briefs that were filed, by Shepard Mullen, we take the position that you take, which is these are state laws. We don't have to effects bargain, right? For state laws, these have to be policies that are implemented. We are entitled to send out a subpoena. What the sheriff's department does with discipline is a different matter, right? We don't discipline, you don't discipline, right? As far as their employment discipline.
Here's who disciplines. What is our subpoena power? It's a power to call, if we need to, a deputy sheriff. Or
Correct.
some member of the sheriff's department or some citizen before us, put them under oath, and the only expectation is they testify truthfully.
Absolutely.
All right, or invoke any privileges they may have, but
Right.
that's the only, if they don't do that, the recourse isn't discipline.
It's-
It's to hold them in contempt of the subpoena in Superior Court.
Correct.
Okay, so that's number one. And number two is, what you're really telling me is that the decision to meet and confer really is a decision that the sheriff made. The sheriff's department makes that because there is no meet and confer if state law is there. I say that we're both lawyers here.
Yes.
And I assert that maybe I should do further legal research into this, but I mean, by and large, you're not at liberty to say we want to meet and confer because we don't like the state law. And you also said this is policy. This is not policy we're talking about. We're talking about law here, both
Yes.
ordinance and law made by our state legislature, signed by the governor. So in any event, I'm betting I know a little bit, but I actually don't know why we're in this process. The Inspector General was in the process. Somehow it sucked us into the process now. But I would like to just take the position that there is no meet and confer here. And on the other hand, I guess we'll just have to litigate that because the unions are saying, no, you can't, the law isn't what the law is because we disagree with the law and we don't think you should be able to do it. By the way, I don't know, should I tell, I almost want to tell a story about meet and confer. I mean, I dealt with labor unions, the Treasury Union back when I was the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. And, I issued an order requiring all customs inspectors, all frontline inspectors to wear radiation detection devices. Now that's part of the uniform, right? By the way, that was part of the collective bargaining agreement. But I said, I'm not meeting and conferring on that. I'm just ordering it because it's a public safety matter for the country. It's a national security matter. And I'm not meeting and conferring and discussing this with you. And I issued it. Of course, they were able to, they decided, well, they did grieve it, but they decided to withdraw the grievance. But I'm just saying there's leadership here. And I'm speaking to the sheriff's department. I know the sheriff isn't here. There's leadership here. I mean, just let's get on with it. But okay, I'm sorry. I should,
Yeah, but
send me the bill for the therapy.
Yeah.
But
You are 100% correct that the sheriff's department could implement a policy without meeting and conferring. And if they did that, they would only have to meet and confer on the effect of that policy. So there could be, there's a case, San Francisco Police Department, where if something is a managerial decision, right? And I would argue that anything that is a matter of state law is a managerial decision. In San Francisco PD, in that case, it was a use of force policy, actually, that was implemented. So it is a managerial decision. So then it becomes a decision, if you want to go in and negotiate the policy, that is more for down the road when you get to effects bargaining, if they find that the sheriff's department acted in good faith, right? So the sheriff may say, well, I want to look like I'm acting in good faith, so I'm going to go in and negotiate the policy, right? But my understanding of the law is that that's not a requirement. Now, as you indicated earlier, county council might be able to give an answer because they are the counsel for the county and I'm not. But I would suggest that, the briefs that the county filed in our case are consistent with what I'm saying, which is that if something is state law, it's a managerial decision. You can implement the policy And all you have to then bargain is the effects of the policy.
Okay. The Sybil Brand Commission update. Do we have anyone from Sybil Brand? I don't think we do. Move on to the ad hoc committee updates from commissioners. We have a ad hoc interviewing a replacement for our open commissioner position. We've submitted 2 names to the board as supervisors, and we await further information from the board. The Quality of Life Ad Hoc Committee, I think that's Irma's.
I think Irma just stepped out.
just
And
stepped out.
I have a brief report both on the deputy gangs ad hoc and the disciplinary process. I guess I could give them now while we
Go ahead.
wait for Irma. On the deputy gangs ad hoc committee, it met just a few days ago, actually on June 18th. It did consider a couple of things. I'm just reporting out now. One was we did discuss the fact that the Oversight Commission, our commission, is being charged for outside counsel that's engaged by the county council to enforce our subpoenas. This was news to me, and I think to many of us, that this charge was being made, but the outside counsel expenses are being charged against our budget. There are 2 problems with that. One, there's no budget there's no line item in our budget that covers legal expenses and fees. But there's also a second problem with it, and that is that the outside counsel in cases that have been brought to enforce Oversight Commission subpoenas, they don't report to us. We don't give them instructions. We have no participation in who's selected. They really don't function as our counsel. And so I think on a policy basis, I fail to understand why we're being charged. Our commission, which has a very small budget to begin with, is being charged. By the way, it's estimated to be somewhere north of $600,000 this fiscal year that we'll have to absorb without any line item budget. So we did discuss that issue. We can discuss it more if we want to at this point at this meeting. The second item, though, is that the Oversight Commission was of the view, at least the majority was, of the view that we should conduct a further special hearing into, it's not specifically into deputy gangs and cliques, but it's somewhat related, and that is into the public corruption unit of the Sheriff's Department that was established by the former sheriff and no longer exists, but that it would be appropriate to actually have a hearing in which we try to develop information as to whether at least part of the function of the public corruption unit was actually to intimidate oversight individuals that have oversight over the commission, which, by the way, would be absolutely intolerable. But there is some evidence to suggest that's the case. And so I think it's important that there be a public hearing and airing of the public corruption unit so that there is never another public corruption unit that engages in intimidation tactics. We don't have a date for that hearing yet. We need to negotiate that, or our chair will negotiate that with Loyola Law School, but we will set a date for it. We already have authorization to call Mark Lilienfeld as a witness, but we would also plan to subpoena Max Fernandez, who was also a member of the public corruption unit. And we will need a motion, and I'm going to make one because we need authorization to issue that subpoena. Obviously, we would ask that Max Fernandez, we will ask that he appear voluntarily. But if he doesn't appear voluntarily, we need authorization to serve a subpoena on him. So I'm going to move that the oversight, subject to discussion, but I am going to ask for authorization, a motion to authorize the issuance, authorize the chair to issue a subpoena for Mr. Fernandez's testimony at such date as we can schedule a special hearing on this matter. So that's my brief report on the deputy gangs ad hoc committee of our commission.
Okay.
I do have a motion, though, and I'll ask somebody to second it, and we can vote on it at some point in time, I hope.
Anything else?
Not on the deputy gangs.
Yeah.
I really have very little to report on the disciplinary process, other than the disciplinary process ad hoc committee did have an excellent briefing from experts from PERF, which is a police executive agency based in Washington, D.C., regarding best practices with respect to discipline and discipline systems. And we also heard earlier in the last month from the ACLU, and their concerns about discipline issues involving use of force in the jails. But that'll all be part of the report and recommendation ultimately that the discipline process ad hoc committee comes up with. And we probably have a few more witnesses we're going to call before we start drafting a report and recommendations. So those are those two committees' reports. I know Irma had a report on I believe it's the Committee on Quality of Life.
So Rob, the motion was that the commission vote whether to authorize the chair to subpoena Max Fernandez.
Yeah, that's the motion. Did I have a second for that?
I believe, sorry, I believe the COC has already given the ad hoc committee authority to issue subpoenas, the deputy gang subpoena, the deputy gang ad hoc. So if that's what you're saying, I don't think you need to do that.
She's saying we may not need a motion, but what we did adopt was a procedure whereby between meetings of the Oversight Commission, the ad hoc committee could authorize the chair to issue a subpoena that would be ratified at the next meeting by the chair. But since we're actually meeting today, I thought we might as well just authorize it, the full commission authorize it, if in fact it wishes to do so.
I'll second the motion.
Right, thank you.
So
Public comment.
yeah, I was going to say, we're going to have public comment in a minute, and then we can do the vote before we break. Thank you, Rob. Irma, the Quality of Life ad hoc.
Yes.
Do you have anything to report on?
Not a lot. The Quality of Life Ad Hoc Committee is pending additional follow-up material from the department related to an ongoing review of the Suicide Prevention and Employee Wellness Center. So we're still waiting for that information. That's all I have to report.
Okay. The Governance Ad hoc Committee is looking at the bylaws and the ordinance that govern this commission. And, there's really nothing to report other than that we are still in the process of kind of looking over our bylaws to make sure we comply with existing law. Hans, the Technology Ad hoc.
Yes, our committee met a month ago today to discuss and to hear from Sheriff's Department staff about implementation of drones and how the department is seeking to use drones at different stations. We got a very worthwhile update from staff about that. I think we continue to express our interest in maintaining observation about the potential expansion of that program and our reservations about any contracting out of drone services, and to maintain consistency and transparency about the expansion of any drone systems by the department. So we will be continuing to do updated meetings about that, and we will come back with further reports to this body.
Okay. Tracy, that concludes all of our different reports. And so I think the time for public comment is now, before we take any vote on the subpoena issue. Do we have people who are signed up to comment?
Yes, we do have public comments. First speaker, we have Vanessa Perez.
I think we were talking about school resource deputies. If that's what it was, that's what I was going to talk about. I think there needs to be better background checks before deputies get put into schools. I know couple weeks ago, me and Raquel were at that meeting for the Board of Supervisors. Yeah, there needs to be better background checks before they put deputies inside the schools. So
Thank you. Our next speaker and final speaker is Benny Martinez.
Hello, and thank you again, Commission. And I guess I'd like to offer, whether it's considered my expertise or my experience within the military, I was an administrator and also security. And that just happens when they sent you to Afghanistan and decide we need more security. I've had experience that kind of varies, and the range is very wide because, you know, it just happened to be me that wanted to put myself in places where I can throw a wrench in the cog. And so as I share this, I'd like for you to strongly consider, when it comes to background checks for the military, there's even levels at which, you know, your relatives will be asked questions. When it comes to, you know, how much they get paid in comparison to local law enforcement, there's an enormous disparity in how much they can increase their pay within local law enforcement versus the enormous investment that the United States government does for military members such as myself. When it comes to mental health, is always very low. Only recently at the Long Beach VA facility, I did start creating a therapy group that's been eliminated now, but to address the trauma that comes from the racism that exists within just the VA. Now, we get to discuss those issues that we face within the military. Reason why I bring that up is there's a lot of work that's being done after the fact, and points being made with regards to background checks before going into certain services or special areas such as school, where I'd say, let's actually make sure that the background checks from the get-go are not just more thorough, because from my experience, from friends that became law enforcement, I should say former friends that became law enforcement and are still there, that have been removed from duty and placed back in duty after this big, you know, investigation that happened maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. Excuse my memory's not great. But a lot of these sheriffs, deputies got trained to pass their mental health evaluations after they were originally even denied. They get an opportunity to basically rehearse and present something different. Now, this may just be hearsay, or it may just be something that can be checked by asking the psychologists that no longer do those evaluations, and just to, you know, have them write a synopsis of what their experience was like without naming people because of HIPAA or because of privacy issues. Last thing I'll say, get rid of the LSD gangs, boot the banditos. It's just enough is enough. Too many families are being affected and harassed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair Kennedy.
I think it's time for a 15-minute break, and then we'll take up the vote after that break.
After the break?
Yes. Okay, we're going to resume this meeting.
So that it's like,
Michelle,
it is very well.
Connor, you've been here
spelled
from the
out,
beginning.
this decision. Like, once you understand, like, they can't implement a managerial decision, but you still don't know.
Right. Thank you. I accept it, accept it.
Like, D when they. So we got though, I.
We're going to resume our meeting because we have some pretty important educational presentations. And our first one is from the Office of Inspector General.
Hello. So I'm here to talk about Sheriff's Department report writing. And I would like to just point out to start that the Sheriff's Department does have policies on report writing. And there are state laws with regard to report writing for regular reports and specifically for use of force reports. So I think that they're really, everything that aligns is that obviously, it's very important for peace officers to gather information. And the Sheriff's Department trains peace officers that work for them in the, starting in the academy with writing reports. They are required to write reports in the academy. Those reports are critiqued by their supervisors. They are actively told to take notes in the field and not to rely on their memory, and to ensure that their reports are thorough, because obviously investigative reports become the background for a crime, and use of force of reports are important in order to comply with state law and to make sure that the Sheriff's Department policies are being followed. The reports are supposed to be well organized, include facts needed to establish that a crime has been committed if it's an investigation, and that all actions taken by the officers were appropriate. So that's something that is required to be in their reports according to their course outline for report writing. So there's the sort of the who, what, where, why, when. And as I indicated, the reports are graded at the academy. And for use of force policies, the reports are required to include proper documentation, articulation of events, and documentation of injuries and first aid rendered. Now, I know that there was a presentation in the May meeting about use of force report. And I think that, wherever there are policies and training, the issues then always come down to the practices, right? So within the Sheriff's Department, they need to hold deputies accountable for their report writing. There needs to be a rigorous review of those reports. There needs to be corrections made to reports prior to finalizing them, prior to supervisors signing off on them. And if there is a mistake found subsequent to the report being finalized, it's incumbent upon the deputies to write a supplemental report, which as a prosecutor, when I was a prosecutor, I have asked deputies to write corrective reports when the report had an error in it, to make sure that the supplemental report corrected those previous errors. And it is the role of supervisors for use of force applications to review the reports of use of force and make sure that they are accurate and thorough. So the policies can be found on the Sheriff's Department website. And they are in MPP 4-01/020.10 content of incident reports. Rather than reading the MPPs, I'll just tell you that there's the categories are content of incident reports, crime reporting procedures, outlines for standard reporting procedures. That's in the professional standards division. Report requirements, and use of force reporting, which is online as well. So the Sheriff's Department does have very strict requirements for reports being accurate, truthful, and to make sure that the deputies' actions are well documented. And then the state laws that they have to comply with are Government Code Section 7286 and Government Code Section 12525.2, which requires the annual report of specified incidents involving peace officers. So in addition to the individual reports, they are required to aggregate data and report that data to the state, which includes the gender of race of people who were shot, injured, and killed, and a list of various things that are required when there is a use of force by a peace officer against a civilian. So that's basically a broad overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But once again, obviously, policies in place are as good as they are as long as in practice those policies are followed, and in practice supervisors are ensuring that the reports are accurate and that in both investigative and use of force reporting.
Any questions? Irma?
When the supervisors double check these reports for accuracy, do they use the camera recordings to double check?
I don't know. I would suggest that they should do that in instances where force has been used.
Can, we have a member of the department here. Maybe could you answer that?
Yes, anytime a supervisor, whether it's in a patrol setting or in a custodial setting, will check either CCTV cameras, for example, in the jails, and or body worn camera in a field patrol situation to ensure that it matches up with what it has been written initially by the deputies. So that's part of the supervisor's review, whether it be a use of force investigation or any other type of investigation.
The ones on the street, because in the community, there's cameras also. I've heard a couple television reports that have indicated that based on what was reported in a report was not accurate based on the cameras in the community. So it's nice to know that you're making efforts to make sure those reports are accurate.
And just so you're aware, if the Sheriff's Department collects those reports, the camera video from the community, their system for body worn camera is evidence.com. And when they collect video from the community, those are uploaded into evidence.com as well, so that the Sheriff's Department has access to all of what I'll just call generally community video. Those are uploaded as well.
All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I think we'll take public comment.
Chair Kennedy, we have another presenter on this item.
Oh, I'm sorry. So yes, we're going to now hear from the LASD Training Bureau, who's going to address the same comment. I'm jumping the gun.
Good morning,
Morning.
Chair Kennedy and Commission, Chief Darrell Williams, representatives from the department and the community. My name is Brandon Wicker. I am a deputy with the Advanced Officer Training for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department at the Training Academy over at our STAR Center in Whittier. Hit a lot of points already from Chief Darrell Williams over here. And I was asked to come here to touch on a couple bullet points that were handed over to me. Report writing policies and procedures, which we pretty much just heard them right now. Report types, use of technology and systems with those reports, report review and approval processes, training, confidentiality and data security, and the impact of report writing on investigations overall. Just to kind of elaborate in simple terms a little bit more beyond policies and procedures, when an incident happens out in the field, Deputies' responsibilities per our policy is to document that via report writing, verbal admonishments verbal notifications to supervision out in the field. It goes from the deputy to the field sergeant in the field. The approval process will either be a field sergeant or the watch sergeant back at the station. And if an incident such as a use of force, the watch commander, either acting sergeant or lieutenant, will be interviewing and video documenting any interviews with all the parties involved in those use of force incidents for documentation. For the approval process, just as it was indicated by Chief Deputy Darrell Williams, if any mistakes or oversights are found, that will be sought out and corrected prior to the approval of a watch sergeant or a field sergeant. From there, those reports will be directed to a detective sergeant with the investigative units, and from there dispersed to investigators back in the detective divisions. Report types for our department, we have two types. We have the incident report, which will be our first initial report, preliminary report, and then supplemental reports, which, as earlier indicated, can provide for corrections or oversights or any additional investigations conducted by any other personnel beyond the original author of that initial incident report. With regards to incident reports, we have many different types, from our criminal reports for burglary calls or significant uses of forces, arson reports, traffic collision reports, miscellaneous information reports that has no workable information, and a handful of others. Initial preliminary investigations would be documented under that category of incident reports. And anything beyond the completion of that incident report, again, any other independent investigations, either from investigators or other field personnel during the preliminary investigations, that would be documented in our supplemental reports. As far as use of technology and any type of systems that report writing is involved with, handwritten is kind of a thing of the past. It's mostly typed Word documents and attached to the departmental approved forms that we have. As far as evidence collecting, physical evidence is booked at the stations in evidence lockers and other designated secured areas. We utilize prelims to scan and track evidence that is countywide if it goes from the station to crime lab or anywhere else to district attorneys, prosecutors, if it's subpoenaed. That is tracked in prelims, but that's only in relation to evidence collection and evidence transportation. With regards to report reviewing and approval processes, we pretty much hit on that with the onset of investigations out in the field to the approval process with field supervision or supervision within the stations at the desk. Training. Each peace officer in the state of California is mandated in the training academies a minimum of 48 hours of report writing. That is our foundational learning with regards to the mandate to successfully, one of the many mandates to successfully complete a training academy. Beyond that, with regards to our department, we do have continued training. I am assigned to the advanced officer training. My responsibilities and many collaterals deal with deputies that are transitioning from a custody environment out to a patrol environment. And we host what we call the advanced officer course, also known as patrol school amongst our department. It's a 3-week course to prep deputies that have been working in the custody environment or a court services environment about to be assigned to a patrol station in that environment. And it's a 3-week intensive course that also includes report writing components. Confidentiality and data security with reports, with the exception of our egregious crimes out there, murder, sex assault cases, child abuse cases, or involving juveniles. Those reports maintain confidentiality. Anything else is pretty much public domain and is accessible to the public upon request with stations, and there's processes to go along with that if there is a request. And security for maintaining those reports, we have our secretarial staffs at our stations. The head secretary, usually, especially with the confidentiality cases, murder, sex assault, child abuse, juveniles, those reports are personally held in a secured spot that is controlled by our head secretaries in our secretarial staff offices. All other reports are maintained at the stations in file cabinets. And my understanding now is we're transitioning to scanning all copied reports to have it electronically accessible and secured in our database systems. And anything regarding database systems is beyond my expertise. That will be our Database Systems Bureau that could answer to that. The impact of report writing, as Chief Deputy Derek Williams, having been a prosecutor, it can make or break a case. It all comes down to the practices and how thorough our investigations were handled out in the field. If any oversights, if it's caught at whatever level, watch sergeant up to prosecution, we will provide supplemental reports to make those corrections, or if anything had been omitted or oversought out in the field. So it can absolutely help out with investigations down to the detective level, investigative level at the stations, all the way up to filing the case and for prosecution presentation in a superior court. And that's pretty much a rundown of all the bullet points I was requested to comment on. So thank you very much for your time.
Well, we may have some questions. Can you stay for questions?
I believe I can, sir. Yes, absolutely.
Huh?
This is just a simple, I don't know what prelims mean.
Prelims is a electronic database system that we utilize to scan barcodes that we generate for a piece of evidence. We enter it, we log it into the system called prelims, and it gives an itemized number, and we're able to scan it into our evidence locker. If investigators need to look at it, they'll scan it out, scan it back in. If it's in transportation to, say, the crime lab, it will scan out. In transportation to there, when they get it, they'll scan it. So it's just a tracking system for evidence collection.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about technology. You mentioned that they type their reports. So in the field, do the officers have like a laptop computer, or what is it that they're using?
We have our
They're
mobile
not handwriting.
we have our mobile digital computers within the vehicles. I'm 5 years removed from the field. I'm not sure if there's any like Microsoft Word, if they actually have access at that spot inside the patrol vehicle. Designated report writing areas within stations, computer setup at the end of shift, or if they're having to type out because of the urgency of getting information out or getting a report memorialized, will take place in the station. Absent that, if they don't have a personal laptop, I have known other deputies that do carry personal laptops out in the field to do that. Absent that, it would be handwritten reports.
JP?
Can you speak at all to use of force reports as far as public accessibility to those? You mentioned that first reports, other than the ones you delineated, homicides and sex abuse, those sort of things, those are all considered confidential. How about use of force reports? Are those open for review by the public?
My initial thoughts to that, sir, I don't have internal knowledge with the current trends at a particular station, but I would believe that if it's an ongoing investigation, either internal investigation within the station itself, any of that information would either be held until the investigation is completed or redacted. Beyond that, I don't have any independent knowledge on that.
Do you know by any chance, I'm really looking at completed use of force reports and the entire package.
So
those available?
So we were talking about it, and I have to say, I don't know the answer, but I remember as a prosecutor, when the defense wanted to get the use of force reports, they had to make a specific motion to get the use of force reports as part of the discovery process. So that's what leads me to believe that there's a difference between investigative reports and use of force reports. But even though I left the DA's office 5 years ago, it's been a while since I did a trial. And so I can't say with certainty that that is still the case. I can say with certainty that it shouldn't be the case, because if there's a use of force report, then that contains important information about the incident, and that certainly the defense should be given that information, because I think there's always potential exculpatory information, and it's statements of a witness, right? And so my belief is under the penal code that information should be given as part of, I think it's 1054 if my recollection serves me. But I do recall that there was a specific motion that the defense had to make to get those reports. And so that's why I hesitate to say that they're available to members of the public. Now, I know that when Ms. Perez and Ms. Infante gave their presentation, that they had some of those reports. So I don't know if they did a Public Records Act request or how they got those reports. So, but I don't know that even if they did, that would give us the ultimate answer to the question.
Well,
So
it
I
does-
apologize for not knowing that.
It gives rise to the question, because what we were provided, and we appreciate you providing us with that information, it was far from complete. There were gaping holes in that. It clearly was not a complete use of force package. And it would seem that at least this oversight body would be interested in a complete use of force package, particularly in that case. And I don't know what we have to do to get that. I think we need to see that. And I think it raises the larger question of oversight when it comes to use of force investigations, completed use of force investigations. Once the department has done a thorough and complete job and adjudicated it and either said it's fine or they've administered discipline, this oversight body should be in a position to review those documents. That may not be the case today, but we need to work on making that happen.
And Ms. Mosley just brought up that 1421 also comes into play, right? So I believe that Mr. Perez's injuries would be consistent with great bodily injury. My understanding is that he did have staples. And so that would be consistent with the legal definition of serious or great bodily injury, which then would bring into play 1421, which is a use of force resulting in great bodily injury. Now, that being said, I don't know what the department uses as their definition of great bodily injury. Obviously in the prosecution context, it's always up to a jury, but the department should have a policy of what do they consider to be great bodily injury, the minimum of what is great bodily injury. But certainly case law would support that having stitches or staples would be something that could be considered to be great bodily injury.
And under 1421, if it was deemed to be great bodily injury, then that complete use of force package should be available to this oversight body.
I am not county counsel, but that is my belief.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes.
I should say my informed legal belief, but not as counsel for the county.
I just wanted to ask, given your experience in training and in dealing with other deputies about reports, what frustrations are most often voiced by deputies about either the process of filing or retrieving reports that have been filed? What do you hear, and what does your experience tell you about any discussion or any complaints or frustration that's voiced amongst rank and file about reports or their retrieval?
And just to clarify, from the perspective of deputies authoring the reports.
Yes.
Me personally, in my position, having trained and continue to train, I have not come across any pessimistic or negative comments from any deputies along with your question. As far as frustrations for them filing or getting a case filed or what have you. I haven't come across any negativity with regards to that.
Well, the process is being continually evaluated and improved where possible. Where has deputy feedback led to any improvements or changes in procedures?
As far as procedures go, I don't see any changes, but I can attest to the training that we are constantly reevaluating our training based off of the feedback of our deputies, students that come through and struggles that they have personally authoring, not necessarily processes, but the act of report writing itself.
And one issue that I just wanted to raise was about language and language barriers in report writing or in documentation. What issues with language, overcoming language barriers do you encounter, and how do you process or overcome them in the process of report writing, whether it's a witness statement or any other language differences that emerge in the process of documentation or report writing?
Sure. Anything outside of our more commonly encountered languages like Spanish or something like that, interpretation is not always readily available, especially on a busy summer night with a skeleton crew of deputies in the field already. Even a Spanish interpreter may not be readily available. And as far as handling the calls to conclusion, at that point, we as the field investigators in these preliminary investigations have to do it to our best ability. And at times it is very challenging.
What resources do you draw upon in those instances where professional interpretation may not be available?
We do have a hotline that we can dial to get an interpreter on the phone, whether if it's Chinese speaker, Cantonese, any Middle Eastern languages. Sign language is a big hurdle if we don't have one that can readily come out and sign for us. But we do have that hotline, and sometimes the responses can be very quick. Sometimes there's a delay of being held on the phone. And it's all based off of the availability of those folks.
Have you ever made avail of any colleagues or any other informal resources involving language differences or how to render to the best extent possible faithful statements from witnesses or any other involved party in a report? What experience do you have if that formal tool is not available?
Personal experience, take my time as best as I possibly can, act out, with my best ability of signing if it's a Spanish speaker and I don't speak fluent Spanish or any other language, any other kind of form of human communication that can a head nod, the universal yes or no. Unfortunately, it's just a situation where improvisation is needed to the best of our ability, thoroughly and accurately document our investigations.
And have you seen other deputies rely on colleagues or upon bystanders in situations where there is a language difference in order to try to render as faithfully as possible what witness account might be available?
Yes, and I have personally relied on community members in the past as well. And again, it's just documentation of the person that you spoke to and or who assisted you in the interpretation.
Do you have any recommendation about anything more that could be done in that area to overcome barriers to faithful rendering of witness accounts for report writing? Any suggestions you might have that further steps that could be efficiently taken perhaps to improve the quality of evidence gathering when it involves language differences?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you my mere suggestions, but it all comes down to funding and more personnel who are certified in those areas.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I think now is the time for public comment.
Yes, we have two public comments here and we have one online. First public comment here is Vanessa Perez.
Um, Thank you for your presentation. I want to say that let's remember and let's not forget that these are gang members writing down what they want to say on these reports that they're writing down. I know he said that they we can't believe what they're writing. It doesn't take 100 punches to apprehend a 5'2" individual like Joseph. It doesn't take 7 deputies to punch 121 times and justify it. So we can't believe what was said. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next public speaker, or public comment in person is Michelle Infante.
Good morning. Thank you for bringing your presentation. We appreciate it. I learned some things from you coming, and that's very helpful. So thank you. First of all, I agree with Vanessa. There's a lot there you can't trust, especially when you read the investigation reports and you see that there are words that are missing. It's easy to interpret when something is missing and they begin their story with very specific things and then in the middle of it use language where they're not sure and then at the end of it they're very positive about what they do. It doesn't take much to read into those because what you're looking for, it's not there. They're not specific. It's the incident reports and the forms are written in a way where it's a checkbox mentality, and they need to be redone. They need to be redone because the checkbox mentality that they have allows them to get away with not having accountability. And one of the ways that happened with Vanessa is that there were 7 deputies, and when I read the use of force policy, inside the use of force policy, it says that they need to state what happened to the person that they've injured. And out of 7 deputies, there was only 1 who stated that there was an injury. There were 6 that didn't state that, and that's part of their policy if you read it. And not only that, you have a use of force form that states specifically in Vanessa's case that there was training and briefing that was necessary. Then you have 3 commanders that follow up with that use of force form that are supposed to look at it and state the reasons there may need to be some briefing. But out of the 3 that were writing the forms that were following the use of force by the supervisor, 3 of them, not one of them wrote in there the statement that was made regarding briefing and training. So now you have 4 people, the person that wrote the use of force form, a unit commander, a division commander, and a watch commander that are supposed to follow up with each other. And that's not happening. So their forms need to be changed so that they're specific and they answer. And we can do that. That's something that doesn't need the union. It's something that the commission and community could help change, and that's something that you should really think about. They came up here and they talked about all these different forms, but if you have a form that allows somebody to get away with just checkboxing and marking a box and not having accountability, then that's not going to work. No matter how many things that the sheriff's department comes up here and says, that's not going to work.
Thank you. We have one online public comment from Doreen Sanchez.
Okay.
Doreen Sanchez.
I thank the community that came out today and spoke. Thank you. Thank you for going out of your way and speaking our pain. I asked for, it's just not right. We see it, the writing's on the wall. You just cannot watch yourselves. You just, I mean, even the commissioners, you've just been disrespected so much and before our very eyes. And so I just appreciate the community. I ask for more in community engagement and these policies. I ask that you give us the answers to the shooting and the killing of Ruben Salazar. I ask that those truths be told. I ask for the freedom of Leonard Peltier. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last public comment.
Okay, our executive director would like to make a public comment.
Yes, thank you. As an oversight petitioner for so many years, I can't stress the importance of this Civilian Oversight Commission to have access to the investigations that is being done by LASD. You'll be amazed at what civilian oversight commissions can unravel and what they see when they work closely with a department to be able to make sure that those investigations are being done fairly and thoroughly. So I just wanted to say that it's really, really disappointing that this Oversight Commission does not have that ability to do that yet. So I want to thank Commissioner Harris for his comments because I want to see this commission be able to provide accountability as well as transparency. So thank you, Dara, for your presentation, and thank you to the deputy here. But report writing is important. Not everyone writes the same way. There are a lot of things that are missing when it comes to report writing. That's why there needs to be a second set of eyes over it. And even though there are supervisors that approve those reports, I want to say in my experience, the departments that I've seen these civilian oversight entities work closely with, they thank them for finding those mistakes and errors. And they also thank them for being able to look at ways that they could improve reports and ways that they can make things better. So thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. So having done the public comment, let's move on to our second educational presentation. We have the Technology and Support Division here from LASD to talk about complaints.
Good morning, almost good afternoon. Commissioner Kennedy, Assistant Sheriff Aloma, Director Mosley, Commissioners, and OIG. My name is Detective Deputy Todd Bernstein. I'm attached to the department's Business Process Improvement Group within the Technology and Support Division. I've been asked to come here this morning and provide additional information and insight to the department's recently released Sworn Personnel Complaints Dashboard, which is on the screen in front of you. There are some questions that you have in your specific questions that you had in your original request for our appearance, but I wanted to provide a high-level overview first. What you're looking at is the department's Sworn Personnel Complaints Dashboard. This is updated once a day. It gets its source information from the department's personnel records management system, also known as PRMS within the department. Once complaints are received by the public and they've gone through an initial supervisory inquiry, their input into the PRMS system, and they are updated as the complaint moves through the process. Once an evening, the dashboard you're looking at is updated with that information, and it allows the public to peruse these complaints. The screen you're looking at now is the home screen, and as you can see, there's some instructions for the public on how to use the report. some total numbers that are up there. The default is that we are displaying the last 2 years, but I believe it can be opened up further to the last 10 years. But when a user opens it up, we're displaying the last 2 years. The report is interactive in that if I were to use a mouse and click on any of those little pie charts over there, the numbers above there would automatically be recast. There are a total of 3 additional pages to this report, and if I could get technology assistant to click the number 2, the summary page. The summary page, again, lists some of the information that's on the first page, the total number of complaints. And there are a couple bar charts here, along with some information cards at the top. On the left-hand side, we have the personnel complaints broken down by division. And then within the division, to the right-hand side, we break it down by unit. And there's a legend off on the far right indicating the type of complaints. Up on the top, you can see how the numbers break down on the complaints, whether they're pending, and the other outcomes are determined based upon the department's policy for classifying the outcome of the complaints. Commonsensical ones are reasonable, meaning the deputy acted within policy, and then we have exonerated, we have conflict resolution, means the involved personnel went to conflict resolution. Most of these are fairly self-explanatory. As I mentioned, the report is interactive, so if I could get my remote assistant, if you could please click on the upper left blue bar where it says North Patrol Division, just if you could click anywhere on that bar. Please, there we go. Yeah, just click on there. No, lower down. The bar on the leftmost bar chart. Yep, keep going left. Big blue bar. No, the other left. Up, North Patrol. There it is. Just click there. Single click. There we go. So you'll notice when you click on that, all of the other numbers up above change. So now I'm just looking at complaints in the North Patrol Division. So every other number on there changed. If you do another single click on there, you'll undo what you did. So if you could do one more click, it'll bring everything back. So you could, again, look at it per division and then drill down to the individual unit. If you could now please click on the details screen there. Yep, number 3. So these are the details of the underlying complaints that are in the system. These can be changed based upon the selections made on the front screen. And again, we have the incident date. Actually, I take that back. The date we use for complaints is the date that it was reported to the department. And I want to make the distinction there. When you talk about a force case, obviously we know the date of the incident. It's the date that the force was used. On a complaint, oftentimes use, for example, a member of the public that has an interaction with a deputy in the field, and they believe the deputy treated them unprofessionally. That citizen may delay coming forward to the department for a week or 2. And so that's why we use the date that we received the complaint in lieu of the actual date that the incident happened for timing purposes, because I believe within department policy, there's certain timelines that, complaints have to be vetted and then, investigated and things like that. So this is the underlying information there. And again, that can change based upon selections on other pages. If you could please click the 4th page, item number 4, where your mouse is hovering now. Here, we provide additional information to the public about the complaint process. There's a link there to the MPP section that documents how the complaint process is supposed to work. And we've provided a little bit more information on some of those terms that we saw in those little information cards, because people might not know what conflict resolution is, or unit level investigation, or exonerated. And so the terms there are taken from our WSCR handbook. which is the handbook that department members who are charged with reviewing complaints use. And so that's, like a high-level overview of the complaints. In terms of your questions that you asked, you obviously asked for an overview of the dashboard. I've provided that. The data collection, we get the information, as I mentioned, from the PRMS system once the complaints are put in there. The types of complaints that the system handles, we handle all the complaints that come into that system for sworn employees. So we are not surfacing to the public complaints that might be received against, an electrician that the department has that maybe parked his car in a handicap zone and a member of the public called and complained. That's not going to surface on there. The confidentiality and the data security. This is operated, the Power BI service is one of the services provided to the department by Microsoft, and we use a specific version of the Microsoft platform called GCC, which stands for Government Community Cloud. Although these same features are available to private sector businesses, the GCC is a much higher security level. People that work at the Microsoft data center have to be CJIS approved. Microsoft can't see any of our data. The data is only stored on U.S. soil. It's not stored outside of the continental United States. And the data is encrypted, both at rest and during the actual transformation. In the instant matter for the public complaint dashboard, we're not surfacing any personally identifiable information there. So we are confident in terms of the steps we've taken to ensure confidentiality of both the employee who are maybe the subject of a complaint, as well as the complainant themselves and or any witnesses to such complaints. In terms of future enhancements, as the name of our group implies, Business Process Improvement Group, we're constantly updating things based upon input we get from the public or within the department itself. The other question you asked, I would like to perhaps get some clarity on. You wanted to know about impact on accountability and transparency, and that question can be sort of interpreted a couple different ways. So if anyone would like to maybe offer some color on that one, I'd be happy to address it. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
I think one question that we had is which of these findings leads to discipline on the dash?
Which of the findings leads to discipline?
You have these different outcomes. Do any result in discipline?
Okay, I don't work in professional standards, but I can give you my commonsensical import. If my assistant could click back on the page 2, the summary page there. So there are ones there that say, so it says, if it says like department level investigation or unit level investigation, that would be when a complaint crosses over from a mere, a complaint to the point where there's an internal investigation, meaning that the complaint reveals to the people that are reviewing it that perhaps department policy might have been violated. So that's where you're going to get the unit level or the department level. Certainly things in the green boxes, exonerated or reasonable, won't lead to any subsequent internal investigation.
Any questions?
Yeah, let me ask, this is the dashboard, I find interesting. Thank you for walking us through it. But I'm kind of interested in how the department uses the dashboard. I mean, is this just for the public benefit or does the department itself, and I'm talking about departmental managers, station captains and the like, do they use this dashboard for any purpose or is it for a public consumption?
By virtue of the fact that it's on the public website, it can be accessed by department members. I'm not aware of any specific uses that they are employing within the department. Our group is building other tools similar to this for use internally within the department that provide a little bit more more detail that a manager would need.
I got that. I mean, but the reason I'm asking is just as an example.
Yes, sir.
When you look at the dashboard, you see that, for example, in certain stations, there's a kind of a disproportionate percentage of discourtesy, let's say, just to members of the public, complaints about discourtesy. Some of them were resolved as reasonable, but some were not resolved as reasonable. And it just, it seems to me that this would be, it's valuable information. Perhaps there's another form that could be more specific, which is like a unit investigation and the like. But I'm just wondering, and it goes back to my ComStat question, to be perfectly blunt about it. But I mean, how is data used to essentially correct behavior? In other words, if you've got a station in the department that has a disproportionately large number of discourtesy complaints that are found where the conduct wasn't reasonable, something should happen, right?
Well, yes and
captain
no.
of the station should be discussed. This should be discussed with them in terms of how do you do something at muster to educate that this is not acceptable conduct. And I say that because, the department, I mean, it has a reputation. I mean, we talk about gangs and cliques, but it actually has a reputation of being rude and discourteous to citizens and residents of the county. I'm just telling you. And that the policy should be that you treat people with dignity and respect. And the only way you do that is by knowing when people are not being treated with dignity and respect. When there is unprofessional, I consider discourtesy to be unprofessional conduct. So anyway, that's my question. And Lieutenant, by the way, I don't know why I'm addressing it to you. Actually, I'm addressing it probably more to the sheriff and the command staff. But I mean, if you want to comment on it, though.
Yeah, I will. First of all, thank you for the promotion. I'm
Congratulations.
looking forward to the next pay cycle because that lieutenant pay will definitely help out. So let me comment on what you said. We're probably in the same age range, and all probably heard Mark Twain's old, there's liars, damn liars, and statistics. And one thing I've learned by working with data in the department is I can make the statistics say anything. You give me some statistics, and I can make them look this way or that way. To your specific point here, when you talked about, you gave a legitimate example. If you have a station that has a higher percentage of, let's say, discourteous complaints. Yes and no, because this is not entirely dispositive as to the full picture. Let me give you an example. When you're talking about the number of complaints, there's one piece of information we're not digesting in here, which is the number of contacts. So, what is the complaint ratio, not just on the raw numbers? Of course, Lancaster, our busy station, is going to have more than Avalon out there in Catalina. What we're trying to eventually bring in, especially for the internal tools, is, all right, how many complaints do you have as a ratio to the number of public contacts you have? So that would be something a little bit more dispositive where you could then get a true comparison, between stations. The other challenge that we have is that when you talk about complaints, different people, different functions within the department will generate more complaints, okay? A motor officer, historically, is going to get a lot more complaints than a deputy that investigates traffic collisions, by the virtue of the fact that the motor officer will oftentimes have thousands of contacts a year with citizens, many more than a traditional patrol officer. Traffic citations can be emotionally frustrating for people, and sometimes there is discourteousness on the part of the deputy, but oftentimes citizens get frustrated, and so a motor officer is going to have a lot more complaints. Conversely, if you're looking at force, right, a guy on our SWAT team is going to have more uses of force than the motor officer. So the best way I can answer your question is we are developing tools to be used by managers on the inside because our department's got a lot of data. But getting that data into information is what these tools are designed to do. I hope I answered your question.
That's an excellent answer, and you're right. There are a lot of factors that have to be looked at to see whether there really is a problem. So I appreciate that
Yeah.
answer.
And I emphasize within the department. I say, look,
I'm
this
ready
is
to promote you, actually.
higher than lieutenant. So yeah, I talked to the leaders within the department all the time that this information is not dispositive. It's like a pointer, it's like, hey, look over there. Is there a there there? Okay. Yes, sir.
In two instances, if you could click forward to the what are different outcomes explanation.
Ma'am, could you go to page 4?
I just wanted to ask about two categories listed there because I think there's there may be some elasticity, to put it diplomatically, in some of the category listings there around exonerated. The language in exonerated includes in the end of Part B that a reporting party demonstrated diminished capacity. And I just wanted to ask if that category can be used if there is some question either at the point of intake or in follow-up with that complainant about their perception or any potential substance abuse or any effort to disqualify them as a reporting party, citing that component of the exonerated criteria. And I just wanted to ask if you've ever seen a complaint given a disposition of exoneration because of that possible loophole in Part B of the definition.
Thank you for the question. So at the area of the department I work in, I have no involvement with reviewing the complaints when they first come in, which I believe is generically within the department called a supervisory inquiry, or when they go to the formal review and investigation process. Nor do I have any involvement with the actual creation of those definitions.
Well, I also just wanted to point out under the unable to determine that there's a similar degree of subjectivity in that one that I just wanted to ask about if this has ever been raised, because there under the unable to determine, it would seem that that also could be used as a disposition of a complaint when maybe there was a desire to cast it aside or to terminate follow-up on that complaint because something could be deemed unable to determine.
I mean, the logical response to your statement is that anything is possible. I can tell you that the more traditional use for unable to determine, I'll give you an example. We receive a complaint that a number of patrol cars were driving aggressively through the city, and they cut me off, and I almost got in an accident. Okay. Did you get the numbers on the patrol cars? No. Did you get the license numbers? No. Okay, but you obviously knew where it happened. Yes. Okay, it happened in the city of Norwalk. Okay, so the supervisors are going to do a good faith review. That's going to get routed over to Norwalk, right? Let's say Norwalk does an investigation and they can't identify any of their deputies that were in this area at that time. The reason I use Norwalk is specifically because our department has Data Systems Bureau headquarters there, body-worn camera units there. A lot of deputies throughout the week drive there from other areas of the county for training. So it's entirely possible that even though a good faith effort was made to send it over to Norwalk Station, and Norwalk Station, check their resources, what units are assigned there to work there, they couldn't, because in reality, the cars may have been from another area. So that would be an example of an unable to determine. It's in cop speak, it's called nothing workable. There's no workable information that I could use. So that's the more common import of why a complaint, in my opinion, would be used as unable to determine.
Anyone else? Derry, you had a question?
I do. So where on the dashboard does it show you how many complaints were founded or complaints where a PLE, which is a performance level evaluation, was issued?
If I could get my technical assistant to press over to number 2 again. So when we talk about complaints that are founded, using this screen as an example, there are categories there that deal with could have been better. I believe there's should have been better, unit level investigation, department level investigation, would, in my opinion, be ones that we would say that they were, founded, meaning that the conduct was deemed to,
But as a member of the, I mean, I know that, but as a member of the public, you can't read that and know that.
That's right.
All you have from this is that they're at the unit level or they're at the department level, but it doesn't say that they were founded. So you have 3 red categories, and I would actually note that those categories compared to all the other categories are pretty small. Not very many complaints are founded, to be fair. And so I think that if you have a public dashboard, the public should be able to read the dashboard and understand that those 3 categories mean that there was to some extent, that the investigations were founded, as opposed to just having it sort of held in this, like, purgatory that they're being.
You bring up a good point, and I can consult with department executives regarding that. However, I do want to point out that there's some subtleties here. Just because something was referred to a unit level investigation or a department level investigation, that in and of itself, we don't know the outcome of that investigation.
But that's what I'm
Right.
saying.
And then
Like,
the other
you
thing.
should know. I mean, we're not talking about anything confidential here. We're simply talking about a number. So if you're going to have a public dashboard, it seems to me that you should have on here what the outcome of those are. Right. And I understand that you're the data expert, but the bottom line is.
No, but I'm also a usability. I'm a member of the public.
Right.
If a friend or family member was looking at this from home, the idea is they can get some self-help here without having to go through the PRA process and requesting stats. So I understand what you're saying, and I could see that if there's a one or more of those little boxes that would be deemed as a founded complaint, that we could take efforts to highlight that. But I can't speak for the department in terms of the subtlety, like, for example, could have been better. Okay. So because of what I do in the department, I don't have any experience or training on what they would use to, using the example of discourtesy, as the other commissioner mentioned. The vast majority of complaints the department gets are for discourteousness. So if a complaint regarding discourteousness is lodged with the department, and then it gets thrown into the bucket of your conduct could have been better, the common sense import to that means the supervisor maybe reviewed body-worn camera footage and said, you weren't really aggressively rude or discourteous, but I could see that you weren't exactly the poster child for a concierge at a resort. So I don't know. Do you as a non-law enforcement person, do you view that as a founded complaint? So this is what I'd have to go back to the department and ask.
Right. So, but the thing is you could certainly say founded or PLE, right? So for every time, I mean, it would seem to me that if someone's conduct could have been better, that it would make sense that there would be a performance level evaluation where a supervisor would meet with that person, explain to them how their conduct could have been better. It's not, the department doesn't consider PLEs discipline. It doesn't stay in somebody's personnel file. So it would seem to me to benefit the public from a transparency standpoint, know how many of those could have been better, for how many of those was a PLE issued, right? Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about transparency and accountability. And if someone's conduct could have been better, it would be nice for the public to know that that person was counseled on their conduct could have been better. Not that they were disciplined, not that we think they should be disciplined, but certainly in any line of work, if someone's conduct could have been better, we would talk to that person.
And I thank you for that input, and I'll bring it up because it is valid input. Again, just at my level, I don't know what this, it might just be more explanation needs to be provided by us on the report. For example, it might already be that when you get the could have been better, there is a PLE created.
Right.
And I'm just not aware of it.
Right.
But,
I'm not criticizing.
No, nor am I taking
And
that.
this is all constructive, right?
Yeah.
Because and a lot of this information is available in PRMS. And the other thing that I think the department does have to be aware of, and this is not for you, but mostly so that the commission understands, is that the level of what you have to do to get an exonerated finding that I can't believe as a prosecutor, I'm not remembering how to say this, you have to prove it by a certain standard, the standard of proof.
You mean like a factual finding of innocence?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that in the current Sheriff's Department complaint manual, the standard is not what the current law is, right? So it has to be in the manual, it's preponderance, and I believe now it has to be clear and convincing. I'm not 100% sure, but to be exonerated, it's more than preponderance. Yeah. So the department does have to make sure that even if your manual doesn't say that, I think you have to comply with state law and use what's required by state law for an exonerated finding as far as the standard of proof.
Thank you. One other thing for my technical, if you could just hover your mouse over where it says could be better, just hover the mouse over, but don't click on it, that yellow box there. So I put those little bugs on there too for members of the public to give an example. Now, in fairness, I pulled those from our Watch Commander Service Handbook, so that's where my sort of knowledge and expertise stops. I'm just trying to take the information, surface as much information to the public. And if you move around to some of the other boxes, those definitions will change. So I grabbed the full explanation there. Well, I didn't have enough room on that fourth page to put it there.
Go ahead, Patty.
I think this is very interesting and helpful for the public to see these categories and how things are being thought about and incidences are being processed. But I do agree, if you're going to have exoneration, maybe there is a category for convicted, founded or something, just to kind of balance it out,
Yeah.
And
Well, as you can see, we're talking about 9 exonerations, and I think we're looking at a 2-year period. Example,
Yeah.
exoneration, the one that's most often thrown around, there was a complaint lodged against a deputy. He wasn't even working that day. I think he was on vacation.
Yeah.
So.
Understood. But I just think if there was a category that, okay, this serious thing happened, serious complaint, and action had to be taken, more serious action, whatever you want to call it, because I see the counseling that goes on in here, with some of could be better, obviously. Some of that's going on.
And if you hover over like the conflict resolution, and, in the interest of transparency, I asked rhetorically to the commission, I wonder if we should take a report like this and merge it in with the commendations that we get from the public. You're trying to, so these are things that we discuss internally.
Yeah,
but we do get commendations too, so.
Right, I know, but as we're trying to build trust with the public,
Yes.
There's a lot of bad press out there,
Yes.
a lot of criticism. So, yeah, I don't know if we add commendations is going to help I don't see this as a PR. I'm not taking this as PR. I'm taking this as
These are just
good information, good data about these different
for people to
processes.
draw their own conclusions.
And it shows that, somebody's taken the complaint somewhere, and we may not hear about it, or other people don't hear about it. And even the person who made the complaint may not ever hear about it, but it's being documented somewhere, I think, which has value.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can I ask, does the fact that Palmdale and Lancaster stations are such outliers, does that tell us anything? I mean, they seem like they have so many more complaints than other stations. And I take,
Without additional information, it tells us nothing.
it
Meaning-
tells us nothing because there's
No,
other
tells-
busy stations that aren't that high. Century's a fast station.
In my opinion, it doesn't give us anything dispositive until you see the ratio of complaints to the ratio between complaints and number of public contacts. Then you could literally see those numbers flipped, meaning that the volume, no, you could see the numbers flip. Meaning you could have a situation where Century Station has a lower number of public contacts, but a higher ratio of complaints to those public contacts. So
I just want to dispute that facially because this body has heard testimony from many residents of the Antelope Valley who have described, not just in their anecdotes, but we've seen evidence, especially as it relates to school resource officers before this commission, that the ratios involving use of force, suspension, expulsion, et cetera, were out of proportion for the Antelope Valley. So I understand the caveat that you're applying to this, and I respect that.
Thank you.
But I do want to emphasize that this is a recurring problem involving stations and deputies from the Antelope Valley that this commission has seen recurring evidence about.
I'm a data guy, so my answers are going to be about the data, and I'm not here to dispute what you're saying because it's not.
No, I'm just asking the question because you compared it to Avalon, and I understand that. But there are other really busy stations that don't have the numbers that we're seeing in the Antelope Valley. And it just so happens that this commission, a huge portion of our time is occupied by people who are very upset about how the sheriff polices the Antelope Valley. So it's kind of like confirming it. Your data is confirming our experience, I guess. Anyone else?
If I could point out one thing that I agree, Century Station's pretty busy and so is Antelope Valley Palmdale. One significant difference, and you touched on this, is I don't know what the population is that Century Station polices, but it is a fraction of the population of the Antelope Valley. Antelope Valley, you're talking about upwards of 250,000 people. You aren't anywhere near that many people in Century Station's area. So to your point, you've got to look at, the data is the data. It's not lying to you. But unless you look at all the factors, it may not tell you exactly what you want to know. But I think this is very helpful and it gives us a pointer of thinking, we need to drill down here a little more. Let's find out what's going on here. Maybe nothing, maybe something. We don't know. But I think that population thing needs to be plugged into this because that makes, you're right, Avalon and Century and Antelope Valley, you don't even talk about it. But particularly from a population point of view, you can see how it'd be very, very different.
Got it.
Well, I appreciate the
Yeah,
overview
it's good.
because I'm trying to maneuver. I don't. So I would definitely.
Yeah, and the department's always, this report, this specific report, as well as the public stops report that we've put up there, which is designed with a similar tool, they're designed for the public. So if there's ways that we can make it easier to interpret, so it's not up there in legalese or top language, we'd like that feedback, so ordinary people that don't have legal or law enforcement training can look at it and it means something. It's not just a bunch of shiny objects. So that's like why I specifically put those little bugs when you hover over, because some people might, what is conflict resolution? What is unable to determine? How is unable to determine different from, unfounded? So So we are trying, but no one's, there's always room for improvement. So
How are you getting the word out?
I know that I cannot speak to the complaints report, but our public stop report, the Sheriff's Information Bureau did a video about that. And I believe they publicized it on the department's social media. I don't know if they have plans to do a similar video for this.
Video.
I wouldn't be able to answer that. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's take some public comment.
Are you done with me?
We have two.
We're just gonna have the public might want to, if you
No
could.
promotions for you.
I'm happy with Lieutenant.
Thank you. We have two public comments on this item. The first is from Michelle Infante.
There's so much to say and only have 3 minutes to say it. I know four of the commissioners up here were present when I did a presentation on complaints with Patrice Colors. I don't know if you guys remember that complaint process. I went into a bunch of different stations and I tried to pick up complaint forms and there were so many excuses. So I honestly don't believe your numbers. It's all bullshit, really. Because what happens to the complaints? Where are the complaints that are handed over that they throw in the trash that they don't want to work on? Those aren't up there. What you should have is a live chat for families to be able to get on there and other people can read what they have to say as opposed to you picking what you're going to put up there as a statistic and data. That part needs to change. It needs to come from family and the community, not from the department, because it's evidence from years and culture where it's been worked like this, that this data is not truthful. I've been there, I've asked. We've seen Vanessa's case. It wasn't even up there and it should have been there up in data regarding use of force. So when you look at those numbers, don't look at those numbers and think that that's all honesty and that's truth, because there's a lot of people whose complaints went into the process, or they had a complaint, maybe they didn't want to go on because they didn't know how to get on the computer and do it. And if you go to the department or the stations and you ask for a complaint form, you're not going to receive it. And having been formerly incarcerated and inside the women's facility, I know what it's like to constantly give a complaint about being sexually harassed and sexually assaulted and nobody paying attention to it. So when I see that data up there and I think about what this gentleman is bringing, not truthful. And I think every one of you know that. So when you look at that, don't believe in those numbers. You continue to listen to the community, because the community are the people who have the knowledge and the experience about what's going on inside. And one of the biggest things that the Sheriff's Department has is their complaint process is problematic. And I'm just going to leave you with this. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think it says a lot. You cannot have the murderer investigate the murder.
Next public comment is from Raquel Derfler.
You know, I come to these things thinking, I got a few set of things to be talking about. And then I sit here and then they come up and you're like, dang it, got to fill another one out. So you are correct that it's data, but it's only as good as what you choose to enter or how you choose to interpret it. Because the data about the AV stations, it is confirming what we come and tell this commission, that there is a problem, or you should pause and ponder. The DOJ had to step in, so there must be a problem. So don't compare that you're not sure. It's a larger area. No, the police is just bad out there. I'm going to be speaking later on 3 individual people that have died since March after coming into close contact with deputies from the Lancaster station. So it's what Michelle says. You have to believe what we're saying. I have no reason to come up here and lie about what is happening in my community. And I was speaking to Melanie, like, you don't understand the restraint it takes when I come up here to be professional, to put it in a way that you folks can actually hear. Because when I talk to the sheriff's department or members of the sheriff's department, they don't hear it. They're in their heads is spinning when I'm speaking. How can I respond to this to make us look good? So that's useless. As far as the complaint process, actually that data is underrepresent what happens because community members know when they go to the Palmdale Lancaster station, they're going to be waiting forever to make a complaint. And then when they do, the complaint goes nowhere. So at least I've educated community. When you want to make a complaint, go to the OIG, to their website. Like, of course, it goes to the sheriff's department, but at least then the OIG can track, like, what happened to that complaint. Did anything happen? Community members, they get a number when they put that complaint in to check on it. Because otherwise it goes nowhere. It goes in the trash or it gets misclassified. So you all seriously need to look at the uselessness of their complaint department. And as Michelle says, we cannot rely on the murderers to investigate themselves. They are there just to make PR, make it look better. I don't know why he's talking about commendations, because that's what they do. We come, we say we've been harmed, and they're like, no, but we do this good thing. So no, this isn't PR. This is for community to know, like, hey, what's happening? But even that's not truthful, because many community members don't even bother to make a complaint because they know it's going to go nowhere. It's going to go in the waste bin. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one online public comment from Stephanie Luna. Stephanie Luna? Stephanie Luna, you have been unmuted.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I just kind of want to start off by saying that, while I appreciate the date that is being shown, I also feel like it's deeply flawed, just going through it and really investigating like a lot of those small boxes that, members of the community are left to kind of click on to look at the data. I don't know, like I'm in a little bit of disagreement that I don't think it's very beneficial. I feel like the data that's being shown, it's only a reflection of what the department is choosing to show on their website. And, they're choosing to show this in an attempt to make it look like they're actually holding problematic deputies accountable when in fact they're doing the complete opposite. As somebody that's used the complaint system pretty frequently and having had one complaint that I filed actually being investigated and having the deputy held, accountable, whatever that means, I can tell you that the complaint process is deeply flawed. Having to go on the website and fill out a Google form where it asks, number one, if you choose to remain anonymous. And to be quite frank, I've remained anonymous on a couple of complaints, and somehow the deputies that I complained about knew that I was complaining about them. So that's an issue in itself, where it's asking members of the public to remain anonymous when in fact somehow these deputies are finding out that certain individuals are filing complaints against them. So that definitely needs to be looked into. Another thing is like what Raquel and Michelle mentioned. It's deeply concerning when you're having people being harassed or intimidated by deputies go into this very station that is in control of them and file complaints with their colleagues. That in itself is extremely problematic. And speaking from personal experience, I had to have a almost 3-hour interview with the captain of the East LA station going over an incident that happened in regards to my son. And that in itself, having to remain professional and having to come from a place of, like composure, where you're talking to this commander and letting them know the dire, like just letting them know the situation and how intense and how severe it is. And to have to document that with the people doing the harassment, it's extremely concerning. And so, like I said, while I appreciate the data that's being shown, I do feel like the complaint process within the sheriff's department needs to be reevaluated, reconstructed, and, remodeled, because this data is not a representation of community complaints. This is a representation of what the department wants to show the commission in an attempt to make it look like deputies are being accountable, when in fact these deputies that are being complained about are still patrolling our streets. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further comments. Back to you, Chair Kennedy.
Well, Todd, I just want to say this dashboard is a real step forward. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll keep working on it. It sounds like, like a great way to inform the public. And I hope our comments provoke some thoughts on your part about how you could roll out more information. But what a step in the right direction. Thank you. We have very little time left. So I hope Tracy will forgive me if I move to item number 10.2, the presentation of slate of nominations for commission officers for the next year. It is time for this commission to undergo a change of leadership. And so to that end, we have the presentation of a slate of nominees for commission officers for fiscal year 2024, 2025. And for the commissioners up here, the slate is in your folders. Do we have any commissioner who wants to do a motion to approve the slate of candidates who accepted nominations for the position of chair and vice chair for the term of July 2024?
Move.
Okay, Patty made a motion. Do we have a second? And Irma seconded. Okay. The nominees for chair are Rob and Jamon, who's not here. And the nominations are now open and members can nominate candidates for chair. Does that mean other than the ones that we've already done?
Yes.
We have two great nominees. Hearing none, that we'll go with them. And then the nominees for vice chair are Rob Bonner and Hans Johnson. And the nominations are now open and members can nominate other candidates for vice chair. But again, we have two excellent nominees, so I really appreciate people being open to that. And so the nomination process is now closed. And
Wait, I thought we were going to have a little discussion before we close it.
oh, I'm sorry. It says now let's open it up for discussion. So let's open it for discussion before we close it.
I mean, I guess those are the nominations that have been seconded, and we have a slate to put forward for our July hearing. But I wanted to speak more broadly to both the motions that are a part of item 10, which is the creation of a second vice chair, and the nominations. First of all, I just want to say, so I'm anticipating that let's say that we have a second vice chair for a moment.
Right.
Because I would support a motion to have a second vice chair. And I would point out that under our charter, our current charter is we're supposed to elect three officers, actually, a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. So I would support a motion that would essentially designate the secretary, to elect a secretary and to designate the secretary as the second vice chair. Let me, by the way, I know we're short on time, and I'll speak more about the outstanding job that our current chair, who is now termed out, Sean Kennedy, has done, but it has been pretty phenomenal, the amount of time and effort he's devoted to this.
Thank you.
More on that later when there's some time. But what I would really propose is a slate that would be just for the chair would be Jamon Hicks, and he served as the vice chair. He served well. The only condition I would have is that Jamon actually assure the commission that he will make the time that's necessary to serve as chair. And if he can make that commitment to us, then I would say that he's the person that should be selected as chair. I actually think our commission has enough work that it could use two vice chairs. to help support our executive director, to help further the goals of this commission. And so I'm willing, by the way, I'm not nominating myself. I've indicated I'd be willing to make the time to be, let's say, the first vice chair, if the commission were so disposed. If it were not, by the way, perfectly acceptable to me. I'm happy to just be a backbencher commissioner. But if that happened, then I would propose to nominate Hans as the second vice chair, and secretary, because we already have that office. We'll just give it a new title along with secretary, so that we would have two vice chairs. So, and what this boils down to is two motions. One would be, motion number one is simply to approve the election of the secretary as to serve as the second vice chair. That's essentially the motion that's in X1. And then the second motion would be a slate of candidates that would be Jamon Hicks as the chair. If somebody nominates me, I would serve as the first vice chair, and Hans as the second vice chair and secretary. I don't know whether we need those motions now, or maybe we can just take it up at the July meeting when we're actually going to select the who has what position. But that's my suggestion in any event. I wanted to get that out on the table because there may be other commissioners that have alternative suggestions, and I'm fine with that.
I thought we'd take up the motion of the second vice chair at the next meeting, but you've made a motion. Is there a second? I mean, I think it's a good suggestion for all of us to think about, Rob.
Then we would have to nominate somebody behind the second vice chair if this motion were seconded and adopted.
A question about the combination of second vice chair and secretary. What is the secretary? How does that, what's that job description?
Well, the code provides at 3.791.110 for the officers of the commission. It doesn't actually designate the duties of the secretary, so the secretary could be serve as the second vice chair if we so wish to do that. That's the gist of my motion. But we're really, I think the duties of the secretary are really not really spelled out. So, and we need a second. I can tell you just the work of this commission, and Charmaine's agreeing with me. I mean, we need to have a second vice chair, not just a secretary, whatever that would be. But what do secretaries of corporations typically do? They're an officer of the corporation. They certify things, that sort of stuff. They may actually approve the minutes of the meetings and that sort of thing. And that's fine for the secretary to do. I'm happy to have Hans do that. But he should also serve as a vice chair so that he could actually function as the chair when it's necessary.
Say, because I think the idea of the second vice chair is really important one, and the attack on secretary, I don't know, that's kind of overloading everybody all over again.
Can I ask this? Is there, and Rob, you thought way more about this.
I currently have overthought this one.
Is there anything that you don't like about if we were to go through the regular nomination process, elect a chair and elect a vice chair, and then create a second vice chair next meeting and get nominees and do that?
I think we should do it at this meeting. That's why I'm proposing it. And the reason is then we would have a slate that could include the second vice chair. Right now, we don't have that slate. And I know maybe I'm confusing people like Patty by saying secretary. What I'm trying to point out is we have a third officer position in our charter under the code. They call it secretary. And I'm just saying we shall call it the second vice chair. And by the way, we are proposing charter amendments. And when we do, we'll change the secretary to be the second vice chair. And I would say and secretary, whatever duty those imply, but it's not overloading with duties because there are almost no duties of a secretary, but there are duties for a second vice chair in terms of overseeing and helping the commission and the executive director, supporting the executive director and interacting with the executive director so that she gets the appropriate guidance from on behalf of the commissioners.
Did
Can-
the
can-
nominating committee already speak to Mr. Hicks about his ability and responsibilities to be in that chair position? Because I would have thought that the nominating committee would have gone through that process.
I don't know.
So the chair of the nominating committee is not here today, but I believe he reached out to all of the candidates. That's how the slate was created.
So he knows what his responsibilities would be.
Yes.
Do you think, Charmaine, that he has given Luis or someone the assurance that he will have adequate time or make the time to serve as chair?
Yes, and he'll be given that opportunity at the next meeting. During his speech, each candidate will be able to get a chance to come before this commission to talk about why they feel that they're qualified to serve in those positions. But I wanted to do a point of clarification for Commissioner Giggins, and that is the role of the secretaries in these boards and commissions is pretty much to serve as the secretary, and the secretary is responsible for drafting the meeting minutes and doing the things that we have staff to do. But that person will not be doing that. We will still have staff to do those, to serve those duties. Thank you.
By the way, let me add one little further point to it. The provision under the charter, 0.110, says that we shall elect a chairperson, a vice chairperson, and a secretary, and such other officers as the commission deems appropriate. So let me just strike secretary. We won't elect a secretary, but we are gonna designate an additional officer, and that officer is going to be the second vice chair. That'll be my motion. And maybe that simplifies it for everyone.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
A second.
Okay. So I just want to say, so we have two nominees currently for chair, two nominees for vice chair, and now we are proposing a second vice chair. And do we have one or two nominees for that?
I'm proposing Hans Johnson for that position. Second vice chair. I'm nominating him.
Hans, do you have any comment on this?
I would be open to considering the role of vice chairs as co-equal positions. And for that to be worked out amongst the vice chairs in terms of distribution of duties. I don't know that I would like to have it designated first and second. I think there are co-equal roles of vice chairs. And I think that's a perfectly acceptable way to multiply our force, given the need for attention to governance and attention to other support for the executive director and staff where needed. So I like the notion of co-equal vice chairs and would be delighted to serve in that role with Commissioner Bonner.
And I accept that amendment entirely. I mean, I think, so the motion is just to create an additional vice chair without designating either chair, either vice chair as first or second. That's fine.
Because Hans, even the chair is first among equals. There's no real boss on this. So Hans, and my understanding also is Luis would like to be considered as well. So for the vice, yes. So I think we have great candidates in both the chair and the two co-vice chairs. And all we need to do is have a vote that we should proceed in this manner.
Next time.
Next time,
Not
yeah,
today.
no,
Good.
just proceed in this manner.
So everybody can think about what they're signing up for.
Yeah. And then we're going to have one more vote on the subpoena, and then we're going to put the rest of this agenda over to our next meeting.
These agendas.
Yes.
These agendas.
We're going to vote on the motion to authorize the chair to issue a subpoena once we have a firm date for a special hearing to Max Fernandez under all of the commission's subpoena authority.
Right.
Not just Measure R. That's the motion.
Wait, I could not hear that.
We're going to do this, the first one, we're going to advance the slate of candidates
Okay.
as we just discussed, and then we're going to do the motion that Rob just made to authorize the commission to issue a subpoena to Max Fernandez under all of our authorities.
Do you want to take public comment first?
Said.
Oh,
We had public comment on the subpoena already. We discussed it, then there was public comment, so we don't need further public comment on that.
do we need public comment? No, we're not going to take public comment. We're just going to take a vote because it's 107.
Okay. Chair Sean Kennedy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jamon Hicks, absent. Commissioner Robert Bonner,
Yes?
Commissioner Irma Haggins Cooper,
Yes.
Commissioner Luis S. Garcia, absent. Commissioner Patricia Giggins,
Yes.
Commissioner James P. Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Hans Johnson,
Yes.
Chair Kennedy, the motion passes.
Thank you. And now let's do the subpoena vote.
Chair Kennedy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jamon R. Hicks, absent. Commissioner Robert Bonner,
Yes?
Commissioner Irma Haggins Cooper,
Yes.
Commissioner Luis S. Garcia, absent. Commissioner Patricia Giggins,
Yes.
Commissioner James P. Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Hans Johnson,
Yes.
Chair Kennedy, the motion passes.
Thank you, Tracy. We're going to adjourn this meeting. I want to tell everyone we're having a historic joint meeting with the Probation Oversight Commission on June 27th. That's a week from today. And that's at Irvin Magic Johnson Recreation Area. And we are going to have our next regular meeting here at St. Anne's on July 18th, 2024.
27.
So that's it. Thank you. You.
Can't make that.